Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the 4-Star Chicago Sports Podcast. We are the Barely There Podcast. And ladies and gentlemen, we got an action-packed show and a special guest. Someone from our chat is joining us today. PT57. How you doing, Jason? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great. How you boys doing? Thanks for having me. You're welcome, by the way.
We're feeling really good.
Doing
How you
good,
doing,
man.
Kyle?
Doing good, man. Excited about the new news in Chicago and the press conferences this morning. I'm excited to get into this, man.
Yeah, and my back is feeling a lot better than Monday, so hopefully I'm going to make it through this entire show. So let's get right into this press conference that had a smile on my face. I can say in my life as a Bears fan, through Flus, through Trustman, through Nagy, through Fox, through Giron, I've never seen a head coach at Hallis Hall more impressive than Ben Johnson was today in terms of confidence, being self-aware. He picked his words very astutely. He felt very prepared for the moment. He showed the ability to communicate, and that really matters, especially in today's NFL. I will tell you, he seemed detail-oriented, and I will just tell you this. What I mean by his ability to communicate, if you watch that press conference very well, when he was talking to Kevin Warren and he was talking to Ryan Poles, he directed his attention and he stared directly at them. When it was time to talk to the players, he looked right at those four players that were sitting in the row and he addressed them and told them exactly what was happening. We're talking about these guys because Caleb, DJ, Rome, and Cole Kmet were there for the press conference today. So, boys, please take it away. You want to go run with it first, Kyle? What were your thoughts? What were your impressions? What's going on, Turk Ferguson? Thanks for joining the show, buddy.
Yeah, what's up, Breaking News, Bruce? Appreciate you guys. Please hit the like button, subscribe button if you haven't already. Please share this with your friends if you guys enjoy listening to us. I mean, Sean, like I said earlier, a lot of the stuff that he said was more like, it sounds like kind of a politician. The whole PR team is there. They got to make sure that he's saying all the right things, not saying any of the wrong things. But I did like some of the stuff that Ben Johnson said, and he does seem to be sincere to me. I think he's excited to be here. I think this is the job he wanted from day one. I think that's the guy the Bears wanted from day one. I think they made that quite clear. A lot of people were kind of harping on the Bears for casting this wide net, doing all these different interviews, but I think they were just kind of going through the interview process, starting to get some intel, trying to better themselves, figure out what a coach wants out of the Bears, what he needs to come here. And I think the process worked out for them this time. I think this was the general consensus number one free agent head coach, and the Bears landed him. And what Ben Johnson said to me in particular that really stood out was, I listened to an interview on 670 Score the other day with TJ Lang, who was part of the Packers organization for a long time, won a Super Bowl there, and then obviously ended up at the Lions, and now he's a sideline reporter for them. And what he said was the biggest mistake that coordinators make when they make the transition to head coaches in the NFL is that they try to do exactly what they were doing on the team they were on previous and just bringing it to the team that they're hired by. But that doesn't always work because you're not going to have the same personnel. The Bears don't have that offensive line. They don't have Jahmyr Gibbs. They don't have David Montgomery. They don't have Amon-Ra St. Brown. This is a totally different personnel unit. And Ben Johnson's going to have to figure out how to get the most out of these guys in particular. Forget about what you did in Detroit. I mean, obviously you want to see a lot of that stuff come over here, especially the trick plays and the innovative offense. But at the end of the day, he needs to figure out how to get the most out of Cole Kmet, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen if he's here, and most importantly, Caleb Williams, man. But there's a lot of good things in that press conference, and we'll talk a little bit later about Kevin Warren and George McCaskey and some of the things that they said. But what was your takeaway from Ben Johnson, Jay?
Proud of him. I'll talk about it later, but I'm proud of him.
What were you thinking? What's your takeaway from that Ben Johnson interview, Jay?
Well, like we were talking about before the show started, I think he was or is very smart. Not just book smart. I think he knows how to read a room. I think he knows how to read a situation. I think he is very serious and genuine. I think he did search. I think he did talk to people, and I think he understands this is where I want to be, not just for the football side of it, but he also mentioned his wife and kids. Like, hey, we go to a Cubs series every year in the summertime. We love it here. So he knows Chicago and he knows what it can be. And he's not dumb. He plays us twice a year. So, he knows what the team looks like, but he was serious. He looked right, like Sean said, he looked right at the players and said, I hope you're comfortable not being comfortable because it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and real quick, I want to say what's up, Dustin? What's up, Breaking News, Bruce, V-Dog, Turk Ferguson? Appreciate you guys joining us. Please feel free to comment so we can get some of these comments later on in the show. Sean?
Yeah, the one thing that another thing that I was really happy about is, Ben Johnson came out and said, Offensive line is an area we need to play from. It's something that Ryan Poles and I have already talked about. I love that. And he did, as you said, Kyle, he touched on the Detroit. He said it's not going to look like it did in Detroit. He notes the personnel looks different, completely different than it did in Detroit. That will take all spring and training camp to figure out. So, like I said, man, the Bears went out. They wanted a silver tuna. They got their silver tuna. They went big game hunting, and again, his overall confidence to me, just his self-awareness, he seemed intentional, more than you'd expect. It just, for me, did not seem like a normal Chicago Bears introductory press conference. It kind of blew me away because it's not something I'm used to seeing as a Bears fan. So
For sure.
thank God for that. And hey, Kyle, I said I wanted to say this. I told Chris I was going to say this earlier too. I've been the hardest on Ryan Poles of anybody on this show. I've dug into him, called him a clown. I've done a lot of things, and I have to say, he was cerebral. He acted swiftly. He didn't mess around. He did his job. He got the silver tuna. Kudos to the entire staff, Kevin Warren, George McCaskey, and Ryan Poles. Maybe he's learned from his previous mistakes under Eberflus, and we're going to get this thing right under Ben
Sean,
Johnson.
I mean, Sean, some of the criticism is 100% warranted. I mean, right now at this point, if you look at the last 3 off seasons, it's starting to look more and more like Ryan Poles is like Mr. Jekyll and Hyde, right? Like this guy 2 years ago in the off season had the trade, which was one of the best trades in NFL history, according to all experts that have anything to do with the NFL. Then the following off season, he drafts Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, probably going to end up being the best quarterback wide receiver duo in NFL and Bears history. They're probably going to end up with the most yards, touchdowns, receptions, completions. You can go down the list. And then here we are in this offseason. He goes and gets the most warranted general consensus #1 free agent head coach. I mean, but at the same time, you get stuff like the Chase Claypool trade and the Nate Davis signing. So, but like we've talked about on the show before, you guys, he's a very young man and particularly a young GM. I mean, he's a first-time head GM in Chicago, and hopefully he can learn from mistakes and clean some of the stuff up. Another thing that was really reassuring from that interview was the fact that Ben Johnson said, we're going to look at the draft together. We're going to look at free agency together, and we're going to do this lock and step and figure out who we want and get him here and improve this team. And I like the idea that now he's got a guy like Ben Johnson helping him make those decisions. It gives me a lot of reassurance.
It's definitely good.
Hey, Scotty, I got to give the guy a little props here, man. He did a good job. He got the guy that we all talked about all season, and he acted swiftly and just nailed it. I mean, they lost on Saturday. He was our coach on Monday, or Tuesday. Come on, man. I got to give him a little props, Scotty. I got to give him a little props, baby.
All off of a 3-hour Zoom meeting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Kyle, and that was really funny because we talked about this the other day. Remember, we were talking about, man, that Ben Johnson and the Bears could have struck a deal, that nobody knows what happened in that virtual meeting, that Ben Johnson obviously came there because if you listen to what McCaskey said, the first thing he said was, I want this job. And the last thing he said was, I want this job.
Yeah.
So,
and Sean, it's like we talked about on the show. You got to take some of the stuff that you hear in the NFL with a grain of salt. I mean, all this stuff is speculation. How many times did we read articles that were like, Las Vegas is really intriguing to Ben Johnson. He really likes Tom Brady. That seems to be where he's leaning. And obviously all of it was BS.
Done deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that if the Bears had decided to hire Mike McCarthy, maybe Ben Johnson wouldn't have gone there. I have no idea. But it sounds like to me the Bears knew who they wanted from day one. And Ben Johnson knew where he wanted to go from day one. And everybody kept making fun of the Bears.
Here last year.
Yeah, everybody kept making fun of the Bears process this offseason. Oh, they're interviewing too many people. Obviously, the system they used to find their guy worked because they got their guy 2 days after the Lions were knocked out of the playoffs. I mean, this was a foregone conclusion.
Hey, really quick, I don't know if we've seen Daniel Jeffries in the chat before.
Yeah, we've seen Daniel here before. I do believe that. I don't know if I'd say he saved Ryan Poles' job. Daniel Jeffries says, do you guys think Ben Johnson saved Ryan Poles' job? I don't know if I'd say he saved it, but definitely prolonged it. Sure, no doubt about it. I think you are going to see an extension for Ryan Poles at some point. And real quick to that point, Kevin Warren was asked, are you going to give Ryan Poles an extension? And, he didn't come out and say, he said, I don't like to talk about the business end of this stuff. This is their personal life. But he did say, I expect to be here with Ryan Poles, Ben Johnson, and George McCaskey for years into the future. So I think at some point you are going to see that extension come. And I think you guys at this point, you almost have to, right? It's almost to hire a head coach.
He just hired your future coach, and you sign him to a huge deal. You can't now just fire or get rid of Poles in 1 year, unless he's completely terrible. But you got to give him at least 2 or 3 years extension, I would imagine. I mean, it's not going to be a 1-year turnaround, guys. It's just not.
Yeah, I agree. I think depending on the length of Ben Johnson's contract, it'd probably be the length of Ryan Poles' contract, let's say. So
Sean, here you go. Dean, I don't think I've ever seen Dean Kurthen here before.
Hey,
You
Dean, welcome to the
What's
show,
going on,
man.
Dean?
We appreciate you coming out on this cold Wednesday in Chicago.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it. Hit the like and subscribe button if you can, man. If you enjoy watching us, please tell your friends. We appreciate all you guys. We appreciate the comments. So Sean, what else did you take away from these press conferences today?
I'll tell you, one of my other favorite things was I love how strongly he spoke about accountability right in front of several players. He was going to demand accountability from, he said players will be made an example of, and he said repeat offenders will be made an example of. I really, really like that because Ben Johnson just has, it seems he won't, people who won't accept his philosophy, they're not going to be in this building. And I kind of really like that. Jay, what did you think of that? Him kind of focusing in on that accountability that we've been lacking here in Alice Hall for a while.
Well, it's great, but he really has no choice. He has to at this point, because if the Bears are going to continue letting your young DBs talk shit to the crowd when you should be basically in the play that's going on while you're talking shit, you're going to let an offensive lineman just not show up to practice or not play or not, you're going to keep doing these things. The rest of the team isn't going to follow you, and you're going to keep getting the same performance that we did all year long. So he has no choice. He has to say the repeat offenders are gone, because we're all going to jump on him. The sports media in Chicago is going to jump all over him. The national media is going to jump all over him. So, I mean, I'm glad he said it, but he had to. He's got no choice. He has to come in and immediately change the culture. That's his number one job, I think, next year is besides obviously Caleb Williams, development. But I gotta set a standard. What I liked about what he said was he was pretty clear in how he was going to do it. There wasn't, a lot of coaches in years past where, we're going to change it. How are you going to do that? Well, we're going to work on stuff. All right. Well, what stuff are you going to work on? We're going to work on the culture. What about the culture? Work on,
Real quick, some of these comments real quick, guys. James Kelfer says, do you guys have any idea why CBS has the Bears taking Genty in the latest mock draft? And we'll talk about the free agency and the Bears.
We're going to get into that.
Here. I don't like that, but we'll address that later. Thanks for joining us, James. Daniel Jeffrey says, do you believe Ryan Poles will finally listen to his head coach and build it the right way? I do think that
I do.
For me personally, I think Ben Johnson's going to be more involved in the free agency and draft process of any head coach prior to Ben Johnson being here. Scott says, still needs to sign some quality free agent signings and draft picks. Poles needs to improve on both. And then Dustin says, well said, Scott.
Well, I will tell you this, Scott Angel. The season did start with the signing of Ben Johnson, but the real season is going to start on March 12th, 2025, when free agency opens, and we start rounding this thing up and kind of seeing exactly what we need in the draft. What if the Bears sign Najee Harris? They don't need a running back. And I'm not saying they were. I just know he's a free agent, so I used his name. But there's a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross before we get to that April draft, especially starting March 12th when the actual season opens. So
we got Plank joining us, and we got B-Dog joining us too, man. Thank you, everybody, for being here, guys. Please continue to comment, like, subscribe. We appreciate all you guys. Real quick, Sean or B-Dog says, hey, Sean, Ben said he was drawn there because of the close partnership with Poles. They go back to the days of Boston College together and kept in touch from afar. He was very adamant that they will be in sync. Yes, I did. I got that vibe as well. And then Philip says, hey guys, what's going on, Phil? Thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll say that maybe that Boston College stuff might have played a little bit of factor, but I think the person, the detail-orientated person that he is, the perfectionist that he is, I think played as much of a role in Ryan Poles hiring Ben Johnson. Not just I felt that way with Eberflus. Like there was a connection. There was all buddies being hired. Chris Morgan's a buddy. Can't wait for that guy to get the can. All these guys were friends. I think now they're doing it the right way. Professional NFL minds. You got to remember that now that we have Ben Johnson in the building, we're actually going to have, a competent decision maker, somebody who is going to take the offense and build it according to the strengths of Caleb Williams. And he actually said that during the press conference, and it was one of the most impressive things that he said. I'm not going to do the things I did in Detroit because this is a different outfit, different skill set. We're going to build this offense around the way it works for Caleb Williams. I love that he said that. Makes me feel even more reassured they're doing the right thing here.
Sean, real quick, we got a Phil 23. I don't know if I've ever seen him on here before. Maybe I have. I apologize if you've been here before and I don't recognize the name, but Phil 23 has joined the comments, joined the chat here. So thanks for joining us, Phil. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you like what we're doing here, and please share us with your friends if you guys enjoy the show. Jay?
You know, his that Boston College connection in his press conference, he said the Poles left when he came into Boston College. So really their connections are the mutual friends that they made in those programs and people there. That's who he talked to. Like, hey, I don't know this Ryan Poles guy very well. You know, I met him a couple of times. They're the ones that went through and said, no, this is like, you want to work with Ryan Poles. I'm sure he probably called some people over at Kansas City, you know. That's the real connection. And to me, that was more impressive. Like, he did his homework. He didn't just say, I kind of like it. He did his homework, talked to people, and, you know, behind closed doors, people are going to say, you know, both good and bad things about you. So either there was nothing bad or the bad just wasn't enough to make Johnson not want the job, you know. So that, to me, that's about the Boston College thing. But other than that, I think that players are now going to maybe want to come and play for a guy like Johnson versus like an Ebert. On maybe both sides, just because, look, I think this is going to be winning culture. We're going to have a new stadium sooner or later. We're going to have, you know, a winning team. And you got a GM and a head coach and a quarterback that are going to be there for a long time. So, you know, maybe if I'm a younger player wanting to get off of that first contract, maybe I want to go to the Bears.
Well, let me ask you guys this. How important is to you guys that Ben Johnson has faced adversity? He's been through trials and tribulations, and he's been on teams that have been terrible teams, and he's seen their turnaround and was a part and helped change the culture of the Detroit Lions. How important is that to you?
Huge.
Yeah, I think it's a big factor, man. I really do, because he's been there for 6 years. So he went through some downtimes. He figured it out. I guarantee he was part of those drafts. He was part of rebuilding that line. He was part of getting Gibbs in there. He was part of getting St. Brown in there. You know,
developing those guys too.
Yes, and developing those guys. You know, so I think that was huge. I mean, again, you know, we've never seen the Bears land the silver tuna, man. You know, and we definitely got the silver tuna, and you know, I was really happy when they did it. But again, today, you know, just listening to him, knowing that he's already come down to Chicago, that he is a Cubs fan, that he loves Cubs baseball, God help his soul. But, you know, it was just so reassuring. It was like comforting inside. Like my heart got warm.
Well, I know, real quick to Ben Johnson's defense, because I've seen a lot of things on Instagram today and over the last few weeks and Facebook about people saying that, oh, Ben Johnson reminds me of Matt Nagy, this glorified offensive coordinator that's coming over here to take charge.
No.
Listen, Matt Nagy was a part of one of the greatest offensive systems in all of football. I mean, Andy Reid is one of the greatest offensive minds in all of the NFL. Nobody ever considered Dan Campbell to be some offensive guru that was getting the most out of Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs and all these guys. There's no doubt. I mean, it's been proven time and time again that Ben Johnson was the one who had his fingerprints all over that offense. And I think he's the one who made that offense so innovative and started to do all these trick plays and the things we saw specifically against the Bears when they did the fake where Jared Goff was pretending like he was about to fall down and then turns around and throws a touchdown. You're going to see a lot of that stuff in Chicago. And I think this is not even comparable. Apples and oranges to Matt Nagy.
They only called 6 games, guys, before, and really didn't do that good of a job in the playoffs.
It was taken away from him. Was taken away from him at one point.
Yeah. Whereas, you know, we got Johnson here. He's got seasons of really good seasons of calling plays, and it shows. I mean, everybody talks about it. This guy's a genius. When we were texting back and forth during that football game. I'm like, dude, he just makes people look dumb. Like, he makes other really smart coaches look really dumb. To me, that's what's awesome. He makes players look dumb. He makes other coaches look dumb. That's awesome because I'm tired of looking dumb As a Bears fan, I'm tired of my team looking dumb. I want somebody to do that to everybody else now.
To Dustin's point here, there are going to be some lumps taken by Johnson, and hopefully he just keeps learning. And I think that's, for me, part of hiring the star-studded cast that he's been trying to put together. Dennis Allen, so he doesn't have to focus too much on the defense. He did say in the press conference today he wants to be a part of it as part of the head coach. He wants to be part of it all. But hiring a guy like Dennis Allen would definitely be a guy for me who straightens out a guy like Tyreek Stevenson, and maybe we get the best out of him because Dennis Allen is a secondary specialist. So I think that can be very huge, getting the smart people around him. And apparently there's nobody else coming from the Detroit staff, so he's going to have to pick an OC. Hopefully it's somebody that has experience that can help him absorb some of these blows that he's going to get during the season. Especially after a bad loss. How do I deal with this? And you have these coaches with experience who can sit down and walk them through it a little bit.
You don't think over?
What's that?
You don't think he's going to be able to pull Fraley over?
I don't think he wants to. I think he came out yesterday and said that his intention and his goal is not to rip the Lions head coaching staff apart.
Fraley might go somewhere anyway, so what's the difference?
Yeah, and you know what, Jason, I said to Sean this morning, I said, hey, listen, man, I understand respect and feelings, not burning bridges, but at the end of the day, you got to make this team the best team possible. If that means going and picking apart Detroit's coaching staff, it's kind of like a win-win, right? Because you're hurting the powerhouse in the division at the same time that you're making your team stronger. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Real quick, guys,
I just read he interviewed with Seattle, or is going to. So if he's
he's already had 2 interviews, but Seattle's
money, who cares?
From what I've heard, Seattle's telling him that they're going to have kind of like a joint offensive coordinator thing going on there in Seattle. I don't know if that's something he'd be interested in. I think he wants all the credit so he can try to eventually move on and become a head coach. Real quick, I want to talk about Kevin Warren, guys.
Obviously, really quick, Kyle. Hold on 1 second. To Bert, the last Bears great head coach will be Lovie Smith. He had a winning record and took us to a Super Bowl.
Well, and Bert, thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you for joining.
I've never seen in here before, Bert. We really appreciate you, man. Keep the comments coming.
He doesn't think much of Ben Johnson, by the way.
But I want to talk about Kevin Warren real quick, guys. I mean, first of all, it's obvious that Kevin Warren's very well spoken. He's a lawyer. He's been in front of cameras before. That's no secret. But it seems to me like a lot of people have harped on Kevin Warren a lot, right? Since he's been here, it's like, hey, stay in your lane and go get us a new stadium. But since Kevin Warren's been here, you can kind of feel things changing a little bit, right? Like, I mean, I feel like maybe, he said today in his press conference, he said, hey, there's some things that Ryan Poles and I don't agree on. And there's some things that George McCaskey and I don't agree on. And I hope in some way, shape, or form that Kevin Warren is making an impact on those George McCaskey decisions. Like, hey, George, I wouldn't do that. That's a bad decision. And I feel like the culture's changing a little bit, guys. I mean, we got the general consensus #1 overall quarterback. We got the general consensus #1 free agent head coach. Do you think that the Bears are slowly making a step in the right direction? We've talked about it on the show before. It's impossible. People expect you to come in here and change a losing culture that's been losing for years at the snap of a finger. That's just not how it works. It's a multi-billion-dollar organization with 150 employees. It's a long process, but I feel like maybe, I don't know if it's due to Kevin Warren or more to Ryan Poles, but we feel like that culture might be changing just a little bit. Do you guys agree with that?
I 100% agree, dude. I think that Kevin Warren's an alpha, right? Whether he's right or wrong in the decision, he's going to tell you he's right, and he's going to stick to it, and he's not going to tell you anything different. And George is definitely a beta. Well, I like the guy. Like, I liked his little presser today, but he can easily be overpowered. And the problem is, in the past, we've had other GMs and other people chirping in his ear, and he doesn't know what he's doing, so he just listens and says, yeah, we'll do that. Why we're going to do this. Now he's got a football guy in there telling him, no, this is how a football organization runs. This is the type of coach you need. This is the type of general manager you need. We're not going to just accept the offer in Arlington Heights or in Chicago. We're going to pit them against each other because this is how we make, it's how we make money and smart decisions. So I do think the culture is changing on the corporate level. I really kind of want to see it more on the football end of it, on the field.
Trickle down a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but I honestly, look, he seems confident enough, Kevin Warren. He seems like he knows what he's doing. I mean, look what he turned basically the Big Ten into. It's a juggernaut now. It was as big as the NFL
champs.
Real quick, guys. Dean Kurtz says thought the same thing about Kevin Warren. We appreciate you joining us, Dean. Thanks for the comment, man. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. What'd you guys think about what Ryan Poles had to say in his press conference today? What did
Well, really quick,
Ryan
before
Poles seems like he doesn't he come across as a little bit timid when you listen to the rest of these guys talk. They're very matter of fact. They're very they know what they want to say. It's almost like they've rehearsed it. Ryan Poles always seems like he's a little like I don't know, like weary of saying the wrong thing or something.
Really quick, I actually when he walked up to the podium today before Ben Johnson came up, I thought his chest was puffy. And I thought he had a certain confidence about him. Yeah, a lot different than the Eberflus when he was sitting next to when he looked like he was getting scolded like a little child. So I thought that today. But really quick, we did not talk about the best part of Ben Johnson's press conference. And I quote, the swagger in which he said it right after he calls out Dan Campbell and KOC as coach of the year, saying, I wanted to stay in this division because, quite frankly, I enjoy beating Matt LaFleur twice a year. Ben Johnson, I love you. But go ahead, Joe. Go ahead, Jay. Take it away on your thoughts on Ryan Poles, buddy.
Look, Ryan Poles, it's a 50-50. And I think we got to be realistic with some of his decisions because GMs just don't hit on every decision. It's impossible. I think sometimes the pairing of that general manager and the coach is so important because, hey, maybe I got a guy that was best available at that position. He's not maybe the exact fit that you needed, but a really good coach is going to mold that player into the player we want. So that pairing is really important. And I think they've got it in really successful organizations like, Detroit and, like New England was for so long. And now hopefully if we have that, we can get Ryan Poles hitting more often. Even though he's maybe not hitting on the pick, it may just appear that he's hitting on the pick because this weird third round wide receiver is in a super fun, very explosive offense that, hey, this kid is now our slot receiver and he's, catching 100 catches a year as a rookie and nobody saw him coming. Poles is a genius. Well, is he or isn't he? I don't know if we really can say or give or take away blame on just one person in a football organization. I think he's doing okay. He's really he got us a quarterback, guys. That's near impossible. Kyle, you probably have never seen it in your whole life, dude.
Yeah,
dude,
I don't think Jay Cutler was given enough credit when he was here. I think Jay Cutler was ultimately a good NFL quarterback. I don't think he was like a franchise quarterback or generational by any means necessary.
The best quarterback we've ever had.
Yeah, especially with the dysfunction that he had to go through. Remember, I mean, how many offense coordinators did Jay Cutler have here? Like 6 or 7. I mean, that's just not a recipe for winning football games. But I will say about Ryan Poles, a lot of people harp on his draft picks. A lot of people say he hasn't done really good in the draft. But if you go look at Pro Football Focus's end of year, what do you call them, Sean? Trophies, I guess, what they rankings, for each individual team. They had Darnell Wright as the Bears MVP. They had who was Sean? Kyler Gordon as the Bears surprise player of the year. Yeah. And then they had who was the last guy? It was another Bear. It was another
Javon Dexter on there too.
Yeah, Javon Dexter was the most improved player of the year. So those are all 3 of Ryan Poles' draft picks, guys. Now I've talked about this in the past. People are always like, "Well, they don't make Pro Bowls." Well, you guys, it's tough to make a Pro Bowl when you're on a team that's 5 and 12 away. It's just not very common. You see those teams near the top, like the Ravens and the Bills. Those teams are always going to have a bunch of Pro Bowls. Those teams that are popular in winning football games and making national television. It's tougher for guys like Darnell Wright to make the Pro Bowl, especially right tackle on a team that's so bad with an offensive line that gave up so many sacks. But I think Ryan Poles has done a decent job drafting. Obviously, he's missed on too much. He's got to clean that up, particularly in the 3rd round with Velus Jones and Zach Pickens and those guys. He's got to clean that up. But ultimately, I wonder, and this could also, but Ryan Poles can take the blame for this as well. But I wonder how much the coaching staff has to do with these guys, because we've seen guys like Tremaine Edmonds play well in Buffalo and then come to Chicago and they look like the worst linebacker in the NFL. That's got to be a coaching problem, right? That's got to be either you're putting them in the wrong scheme, the wrong position, or you're not developing correctly. So I don't know if you can necessarily, Ryan Poles could take all the blame for that. Now, Ryan Poles is the one who retained Matt Eberflus, so ultimately the fault will fall on his shoulders. But I'm saying, in terms of drafting players, just solely drafting players, I don't know if it's as bad as we think it is, or if this coaching staff is just incapable. That was incapable of getting the most out of these players. Sean, what do you think about it, man?
I think it's a combination of both. I do, and I think it's a combination of Ryan Poles also letting go some quality players that maybe could have helped this roster. But again, Ryan Poles, as I said, I was the hardest on this guy of anybody. And I think learning on the job is something that he's done. And there could be some seller's remorse on, say, a David Montgomery or a Darnell Mooney or a James Daniels, and he learned from those mistakes. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because, I just said this in the last 2 weeks. I put this up on the screen because I fully believe this. But Ryan Poles has really changed my mind, man. He really has. And I don't think the Bears are going to be bad the rest of my life anymore. I have a new confidence. And I think that
What's up, Brandon?
with Ben Johnson's knowledge, they're going to go in, they're going to make some smart moves here in this free agent class, figure out their holes, dot those I's, cross those T's, and nail this draft. I have a feeling the tide is turning on the lakefront, boys.
Well, Sean, before we get into the draft here, let's talk about free agency because that's going to be obviously the next big date on the schedule for the Chicago Bears. So first and foremost, Jay, Sean, I'll start with you, Jay. What do you think the holes on this roster are? And try to rank them for me. Where do you think they need to address first and then to last? What do you think is most important going into the offseason?
Number one is interior defense. Offensive line. Center and guards. Honestly, I think Darnell Wright is good. I don't think the kid on the left is that bad either. He's not great, but it just sucks that he's on the weak side, right? He's on your blind side. But I think if you give him a really strong interior offensive line, I bet his PFF grade goes up. I think we are short on one DB, and that sounds weird because we have so many great DBs on our team, but I'm not really sure that all of those DBs are coming back next season. I think we could always use another wide receiver. I think our linebacking crew is okay. I wouldn't call them very sturdy. I love Jack Sanborn, but we could definitely do better than him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think defensive line, we still need that 3 technique if that's the route we go. I don't really know. Poles said that he thinks our defensive staff can easily transition between a 3-4 and a 4-3. I don't think so. But we need another edge rusher too. So I don't know if you can rate one other than the other because your big time playmakers like your edge rushers, those are going to have immediate impact and everybody's going to see it. A center you probably won't see right away. So what the fans want and what the team wants and what I want may not all come together, but I think center and interior of your offensive line has got to be your first priority because if you're going to develop Caleb, he's going to have a line. If you want him to be on pace and on schedule, you're going to have to say, hey, on this 1 hitch, 2 hitch, 3 hitch back, wide receivers have to be there, but he also has to have time. There's been plenty of times where he's held on to the ball. There's also been plenty of times when a tackle's running straight up the middle. What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, it's a
What are you
little
supposed to do? He avoided like 60 sacks this year too. Let's not forget about that.
Jay, the comment, all the listeners are agreeing with you. Dean says O-line, Phillips says O-line. He also says Poles had better build both trenches. And then breaking news, Bruce also agrees with you. He says O-line. Sean?
I'm this guy.
I'm going to give you guys a little tutorial here on Ben Johnson's offense. And even though he says that it might change, his offense in Detroit used a lot of outside zone concepts, knowing that the Bears' offensive line is going to have to get a lot more athletic. I looked up and went into a little bit of what the Washington Redskins did last year and how they improved. They came into the season as the 27th ranked offensive line. Now, I went through their PFF scores, so they weren't that great. They drafted Brandon Coleman in the third round.
You mean like as individuals, they weren't that great?
Correct. As individuals, they weren't that great. They were definitely serviceable. Washington had one of the least talented lines in the league, but they were, again, serviceable because of their because of the scheme that Kingsbury gave them. The quarterback was able to avoid pressure, get outside. I don't think that Caleb Williams is as athletic as Jaden Daniels, but I do think he can create with his legs and make it easier on his offensive line. So what these guys did from the Kansas City Chiefs, they took Nick Allegretti, who was a former 7th round pick. They signed, and I might butcher his name, Tyler Baidez, out of, I think he came from the Dallas Cowboys. He was a former Pro Bowler. And they also signed Andrew Wiley. He was undrafted out of Kansas City. They put these guys into place, okay? and I was wrong. They came in as the 25th ranked pass blocking efficiency last year. They moved all the way up to 10th this year. I don't think that was by coincidence. I think it was due to scheme, and I think it had a lot to do with the guy calling plays. Now, as I say, they weren't that great. Here, Cornelius Lucas was not a starter. Their starters were Cosme, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on this list. They started over 800 snaps this year for this team. There was not one guy in the 70s. 3 of them are at 60, 61, 60.2. Guys, 60 is league average. So having Ben Johnson here, plugging a couple holes. We definitely need a left tackle. I definitely would like a center. I'm a big fan of this gentleman right here, Drew Dolman. This was his stats last year. He was a 78.8 overall. Pass blocking was a 66. Run blocking was a 79. He definitely needs a little help in his run blocking. I think that can come. The other guy, guys, is a big-time guy, and this is Trey Smith. He was a number 1 guard in the NFL last year for these guys, for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know what kind of, I actually do know what kind of money the Chiefs have. They don't have a lot. So it's very interesting to me to say we need offensive line, but if you put the right parts into place, you don't need to spend all of your assets, high dollars on these parts. If you have the right scheme, you can be successful, because we're watching a team who had an average offensive line that somehow ranked number 10 in the NFL play in the NFC Championship game this weekend. That's just interesting.
And Sean, we've talked about before that obviously having a quarterback who's as mobile as Jaden Daniels is going to help the offensive line look better, because the defense is always going to have a spy there. So that automatically takes away a pass rusher for them. That guy has to sit there back, has to sit and wait and to decide what Jaden Daniels is going to do before he can attack. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%, Sean. I think Ben Johnson immediately would make this off. Even if the Bears brought them back the exact same offensive line, which obviously we hope none of us hope they do. But if they did, I think immediately they would look better just because of the scheme itself. I don't think Shane Waldron knew how to address the deficiencies of this offensive line. I think that's something Ben Johnson could probably do. But either way, the Bears do have to address this offensive line free agency, and I think that Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles will do it in step together. Sean, some of the names you brought up, Trey Smith, obviously he's probably the top name out there at the guard position. Yeah. You know, he had a Pro Football Focus last year of 78.8, but he's had higher grades than that before. And it kind of fluctuated throughout the season. I think that had to do with some of the injuries for the Kansas City Chiefs. But ultimately, the guy was projected to be a first, second round pick before he had blood clots in his lung in college, and then ultimately fell late into the 6th round. But he's looking like a guy that the Bears could get. And I don't think they're going to have to spend a ton of money to get him. I'm not saying that he's going to be cheap, but in terms of comparative to other guards, and it stinks because obviously you guys know that the guard market was basically reset last year with the Kansas City Chiefs signing Sean, who was the guard that the Chiefs signed last year to an astronomical amount of money.
It was the center.
I was to say it was interior lineman.
It was the center. What's his name?
It was like $23 million a year or something like that, which is pretty rare for interior offensive linemen before this year. So they're going to spend more than they want to, but eventually you can't ignore these holes for too long, or it's going to start to bite you in the butt. We've seen that already with Caleb Williams taking 68 sacks. You've got Trey Smith out there as a potential guard. You've got Ronnie Staley as potential tackle. Some of the other guards are available in free agency, guys. Obviously, the Bears, Tevin Jenkins is going to be a free agent. The Bears will need to decide if they want to extend him or not. Will Freeze from the Colts, Kevin Zietler from Detroit, James Daniels from Pittsburgh, and Mekhi Becton from Philadelphia.
James Daniels. Thank you.
Well, and you know what, Jay, when it comes to the offensive line, you know, there's you've seen Ryan Poles do a lot of this, like, you know, bargain spending.
He's not been free agency on offensive line.
You got to stop doing that with the offensive line, man. This is a rookie quarterback. Your whole franchise is invested in this one player. You brought Ben Johnson here because you thought the marriage between Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson was more important than anything else as the head coach. That's obvious. If they thought that being a leader of men was more important than anything else, they would have hired a guy like Mike Vrabel or Pete Carroll. This is obviously what it came down to, is the fact that they believe Ben Johnson can get the most out of Caleb Williams. Well, if you're going to do that, Chicago Bears, you need to address the offensive line and do it seriously. Go put some real money in that offensive line. I'd like to see them take a tackle at number 10 in the draft, guys, just because the tackle is one of those premium positions that's so expensive in free agency. You'd like, with them being able to have a top 10 draft pick once again, you'd like to see them address the left tackle and go get a guy that you have in a rookie contract for 4 years with a 5th-year option for real cheap. Because if you sign a tackle in free agency, it's gonna handicap your franchise a little bit. Those guys are expensive. But I don't know. I mean, I haven't done enough into the draft to see if there's a left tackle there worth taking at 10 overall. I think if there is, the number 1 tackle in the draft is probably going to go before the Chicago Bears select at number 10, unless they decide to move
Maybe.
up or something like that. We don't know yet. We haven't really looked into the draft, but first
Now,
and foremost, let's talk about what Ben Johnson needs to do with his coaching staff before we even
hold
get
on
into
really
free
quick,
agents.
Kyle. I wanted to touch on what James said there. Creed Humphrey was the one who reset the market.
Yes, that's
4
the name I
years,
was looking for.
72 million, 18 million a year. Frank Ragnow is second at 13.5. He signed 4 years, 54 million.
He's a Hall of Famer, though. I mean,
the market. Well, the point is the market is going up every year. So if the Bears are looking at a Drew Dahlman who was tops at the center class, you're probably looking at a 4-year, $70-80 million deal to sign a top center. But I've said it all year. I know everyone wants the left tackle, but you need that experienced center with your quarterback.
let me ask you, who's the leader on that line right now? On the Bears offensive line, who would you say is the leader?
Well, it's got to be Darnell Wright by default.
It's got to be Darnell Wright.
I don't think anybody else is willing to take that role.
Maybe the only person left next year. Who knows?
I mean, but we all know that Braxton Jones is, for Braxton Jones, I hate to say an harp on him. Braxton Jones is an average tackle in the NFL. He was a 5th-round pick, so the value is great, but he should not be your left tackle of the future. I mean, if you're going to protect the quarterback's blind side, you need somebody better than Braxton Jones. The thing about Braxton Jones is, by all accounts, he's a very quiet guy. He's not necessarily a leader in the locker room. He's not a vocal leader. So right now, Jason, to your question, I think it would have to be Darnell Wright by default. And when Darnell Wright was drafted here to the Chicago Bears, if you listen to his press conferences or his interviews on like 670, the guy sounded like a no bullshit, I'm going to beat the shit out of the guy in front of me kind of guy. I'd like to see that come out of him at some point. Now, remember, you guys, he's also 21 years old. He's got a lot to learn. He's a very young player in the NFL, and he's only going to get better from here. By all accounts, I think he was one of the top 5 right tackles in all football last year, and I expect him to get better and grow with every single year. Real quick, James Kilfer says he wants Banks or Campbell in the draft. So like I said, we'll talk about the draft in some of these shows later on when it gets closer to the draft. But yeah, those are 2 of the names I've heard come up the most. I would say I would like Banks over Campbell because it sounds more and more like Campbell has very short arms and ultimately may be moved to guard.
He's going to be a guard.
Yeah.
I will touch on this, though, because he just talked about Ronnie Staley. Ronnie Staley is actually a very interesting name because as it stands right now, the Ravens have $2 million in cap space, ranking 30th in the league. Their cap allocations break down at $251,754,000, which is 15th in the league, but their dead cap space is 28th in the league, and that was at the end of the season. So if they do want to pay one of the top left tackles in the league some money, they're going to have to figure out how to move some parts around, cut some people maybe in order to fill that contract, because right now, as we all know, the franchise tag counts against your cap, so you just can't franchise them and think everything's going to be okay. So it'll be interesting, and that's what I was saying earlier about March 12th being a key date, because if the Bears go in and hypothetically just speaking, saying they signed Drew Dahlman and then they sign a left tackle, all of a sudden maybe now Ashton Genty at 10 looks a lot better than what we are thinking right now,
I think the Bears will address the running back position at some point. I think that he's going to want his Sonic and Knuckles. Ben Johnson's going to want his Sonic and Knuckles, or like lightning and thunder, as they call it in the NFL, at some point. I don't know if that's like near the top of their priority list. I think running back is probably considered more one of those positions that are kind of like a dime a dozen. You could find a guy who's serviceable in free agency until you could feel comfortable to draft a guy high like a Jahmyr Gibbs. But I wouldn't expect them to address the running back position in the first or second rounds this year. That's just me personally. Maybe I'm wrong. Sean V-Dog is asking you a personal question here. He says, Sean, are you good with that? What I just said? He's talking about Ryan Poles being extended, getting signed an extension.
I am okay with it now, V-Dog. I said a little bit earlier, I've been harder on him than anybody else just because I bleed this orange and blue, and I'm tired of the mistakes and the missteps that this guy has kind of, I felt like, set us back. But I feel like having a smart brain like Ben Johnson and bringing in a good staff and them working together and him possibly learning from his mistakes, it's a learning process. And us as fans, we want instant gratification. And I think part of my problem was the disappointment of this season. Even if the Bears were finished with 6 wins and they didn't get to the 10 wins that we all projected, I just didn't want it to look that bad. And it looked bad. Like, puking my
Sean, there's
breakfast
no
up on
emotional
Sunday.
roller coaster like being a Bears fan, right? I mean, it's not. We've never had this time where we were like dominant throughout a 10-year span. The Bears have always been kind of this team where you're like, oh my God, kill me now, God. Like, can you please have consistent winning here for a little bit? Real quick, Jay, I want to get your thoughts on this here. Phil says Olin Kreutz should be the Bears O-line coach. No nonsense type coach, no nonsense type guy. And Jay, I know that you're a huge Olin Kreutz fan, so I'd like to get your opinion on that. What do you think about that?
Look, I was just looking up. I think he was a coach last year for Carmel, like him, Jason McKee, and Rashid Davies. And they were 0-3. So maybe he's not a good coach. I don't know. Maybe it's just high school kids. I don't know. But look, he does run a clinic. I do know that, and there are current NFL, like linemen that go to him and learn skills. He was, I think, a first-round pick when the Bears drafted him in '98. He was like I think the number one center in the draft, and he was a monster. I mean, he still commands respect around the league. So, he might be able to teach an offensive line what they need to do. But then again, I don't know if he's going to fit into what, Ben Johnson wants to do. I know he likes to run the football, so he may be great. I don't know. I would love to do it. But personally, I think that $15.75 an hour offer that they made him a couple of years ago, I think it put a sour taste in his mouth. And, you're going to have to either overpay or make like a public apology, which ain't going to happen from the Bears.
Yeah, well, we heard news about
love it, but it ain't going to happen.
We heard Olin Kreutz at I think it was at 670, right, Sean? Or was it ESPN 1000 where he stuck one of the beat writers in a locker because he was talking shit to him? Like, so I don't know what the relationship is like between Olin Kreutz and the Bears organization, but it would be cool to see an ex-Bear who had such an impact for the Bears for so many years become here.
He said a lot of bad things about George, man. I find it really hard that George would be like, yeah, okay, bring this guy in. I'm okay.
Yeah, he may have burned some bridges there. You guys, Philip says the Bears need D-line help, and then James says Khalil Mack reunite. We had 50 Pro Football Focus this year. Khalil Mack, a guy I think is probably going to be out of the Bears range for cost. But here's some of the names that come up when we're talking about edges or defensive tackles, guys. And I'll give you guys the names and you tell me what you think here. So the top highest ranked Pro Football Focused edge was Josh Sweat. He's going to be free agents this year. He was obviously on the Philadelphia
Eagles. He's my favorite. You could stop there.
He had a 72.3 pass rush grade. He had a 60 in run defense, so not great, but better than some. And then he had 8 sacks in 2024. This was really his first opportunity. He wasn't given an opportunity until Hassan Reddick was traded away.
And he also did he play not the whole season this year?
He wasn't a full-time player, so he was a part-time player. Yeah, so for 8 sacks for a part-time player is huge. And then the other edge that people are really high on this list, obviously besides Khalil Mack, who I said is probably priced out of paradise when it comes to the Chicago Bears. But another guy people talk about a lot is Malcolm Kuntz, the pass rusher for the Oakland Raiders or the Las Vegas Raiders. Last year, he had a PFF grade of 70.9. I'm sorry, 2023, he had a PFF grading of 78.9. This year, he had a major injury in training camp and wasn't able to play this season. But I guess that's kind of a good thing, right? At least he's going to be ready for the start of this season. So that's another guy, if I were the Bears, I'd keep my eyes on. I'm not going to lie, guys. I don't know much about Malcolm Kuntz. And I think he probably looks a little bit better due to the fact that he's playing across from Max Crosby, who's one of the top 5 defensive ends in all of football, and certainly takes some attention. Yeah. And then some of the other free agent ads here, guys, I don't really know. I haven't done enough research about them, but I'm just going to give you some names. Baron Browning from Arizona. Dio, I'm not even going to try to say his last name, from Indy. Sean, we talked about this guy a couple weeks ago.
He actually not too bad.
Yeah, and then Chase Young is the guy that the Bears have talked about before in the past when they were trading for Montez Sweat. People were saying they wanted them to trade for Chase Young. Chase Young did not have a very good season for New Orleans this year. Now, that might be due to the fact that whole team was just kind of a catastrophe and nothing good came out of New Orleans this year, but he did not look like old Chase Young. And then Azeez Ojulari from New York Giants is another guy that shows up on this list. I just looked up the top 75 free agents going into the 2025 season. These were the names that were on the list. Sean, I'm with you, man. How cool would it be to have the Sweat brothers in Chicago? You got Josh Sweat across from Montez Sweat. I think they could do some real good damage there in Chicago. Once again, I don't know where the Bears are going to prioritize their salary cap. I don't know where I think that you're going to see a lot of money spent in the offensive line. I think, Sean, I agree with you 100%. The center has to be somebody with some NFL experience. You can't put a rookie center in there and try to let him grow in front of Caleb Williams. He's going to get Caleb Williams killed, and that's no disrespect. I have no problem with the Bears drafting a center, but stick him on the bench for a year. Go get a bridge guy like maybe a Drew Dahlman, 2-3 year contract. Let that center learn.
Drew Dahlman's only 26 years old. If you can sign him, you get him on a 4-year deal. He's 30. You're looking for a new center, and you're also now resetting a contract with Caleb Williams as well. So these are two guys that could actually grow together. If they sign Drew Dahlman, I'm going to do the first backflip of my life. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Well, here, I'll tell you what, it would align with what you need, right? Because it usually takes about 3 years to fully develop an offensive lineman. It's a very difficult position.
Yeah,
all of
them. Yeah, they're like quarterbacks.
Just as much as a quarterback does.
They're like quarterbacks. They're like quarterbacks. Sitting on the bench doesn't hurt them. They're like
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and
learning a really good veteran center is going to help them too. It's not going to hurt.
Yeah.
To James's point here, I wouldn't mind Kevin Zettler as a 1-year bridge, but I believe he's going to be 35 as he enters the league this year. So, I mean, I'm not. I wouldn't be upset, but I mean, I want to get a little younger, and I think Ben Johnson does too. So.
Yeah, B-Dog, I'd say Chris Morgan is probably
B-Dog has got the chat of the night
with the Chicago Bears. I agree with you. I don't want Chris Morgan anywhere near the Chicago Bears. That guy, I think that guy's a catastrophe. I think that was more of a friendship hire than people kept saying. Well, Chris Morgan's one of the best. He's not. He's not one of the best offensive linemen head coach or coaches in the NFL. Jay, I want to ask you something because you said when your list of holes for the Bears, you said DBs was on that list. Are you saying that because you think that Tyreek Stevenson needs to replace, or do you think Jaquan Brisker's health is going to be a concern going into the future?
I think both are something you should really think about and consider. They can say that, hey, we're going to hold people accountable. What if part of that means that I don't want Stevenson on my team?
Yeah, now it wouldn't surprise me at all. If that, I was going to say that earlier. If Ben Johnson came in here and decided, you know what, I want Tyreek Stevenson as far away from this team as possible, that would not surprise me. If he is a hard ass and he's one of these guys that holds people accountable, that's probably the first guy he's going to have a conversation with, I would think, because Tyreek Stevenson wasn't just the Hail Mary debacle at the end of the Washington game. A lot of penalties this year, a lot of doing stupid things. Now, he did instigate a few penalties, vice versa as well. Like I remember that the game where Jameson Williams threw the ball at him.
Oh yeah,
and they threw a penalty on Detroit. So sometimes that stuff can be good for organization, but he seems like a guy who's kind of a hothead and needs to be controlled in some way, shape, or form.
And then Kwani B, you got to really think about that. The guy's not going to be cheap. And how much money do you want to spend on a guy that's going to be hurt? You know what I mean? I guess you could call it the Mike Brown syndrome if you want, but I love Jaquan Brisker. I don't know how you couldn't. The guy is amazing, but at some point in time, sometimes you got to move on from a guy. If you can get somebody else that's serviceable and put him in there, you're let's say 1 or 2 DBs down, you got to pick somebody back up. I don't know if in the pipeline we've got another guy to come in. Maybe your nickel, but he's like the best nickel in the league, so leave him at nickel.
Yeah, you got to extend Kyler Gordon. The Bears got to find a way to extend Kyler Gordon. He might be the best nickel in all of football. He has made a huge impact. He made a huge impact for this team this last offseason or this last season.
And he plays every game, every down as hard as he can. He's an animal. He's a dog.
I'll be perfectly
all the listeners,
honest.
you guys, this is no disrespect to Jaquan Brisker. We love him. We wish nothing but the best for him. We pray for him and his family, man. I know he's still in concussion protocol as of Monday. That's super concerning. I mean, this guy who plays a violent style of football, he hits people hard. He puts everything he's got into it. But this is now his 4th concussion, and it's something that they certainly need to keep an eye on. Sean, Phil is worried about you down here, man. He says, "You okay, buddy?"
Yeah, I'm having a little difficult time, but we're gonna fight through, my friends. Thank you, Broski Bear. Hey, he's new, man. That's a new guy. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday.
Yeah, what's up, Broski?
Afternoon.
How you doing, brother? Please hit that like and subscribe.
Gotta like it, Broski, right?
I'm gonna take it by his little thumbnail there. He is a Chicago Bears fan. Shaw, what's some of the other stuff you want to talk about when it comes to this offseason? You want to talk about some offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator positions, or do you want to?
Well, I like that somebody else just a little bit ago brought up the running back situation, because it really to me, man, if you go down this running back list, I know the cream of the crop is Aston Genty, but Hampton, Caleb Johnson, Dylan Sampson, Jordan James, Trayvon Henderson, Jishan Junkins, who we just watched on college football on the college national championship, destroy a great defense. You got Raheem Sanders out of South Carolina, Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State, Donovan Edwards out of Michigan, Devin Neal out of Rock Chalk, Jayhawk. You got Cam Scattaboo, Trevor Etienne out of Georgia, Damian Martinez, Jaden Blue. I mean, this is the deepest running back draft. And I was talking to Darius about this, and Darius really wants the Bears to take Genty at 10. But when you start looking at last year, what was Bucky Irvin? Was he a 4th-round pick or a 3rd round? He's 3rd or 4th?
3rd round. I believe he was a 3rd-round pick.
3rd-round pick. You don't have to waste this. This draft is so deep, and my deep sleeper right now is Dylan Sampson. Dude, he's going to fall into that 2nd round, man, out of Tennessee. This guy's a sleeper stud. I mean, if you can end up with a Trayvon Henderson, I think for Henderson and DeAndre Swift, their styles are they're not complementary. If you're going to go Buckeyes, you take Junkins because he's the opposite of what DeAndre Swift is. Swift gets to the outside. He can run between the tackles. This guy, Henderson, he likes to get outside. He likes to catch the ball and run. He's more of a, athletic back than in between the tackles. I do think it is quintessential, and we have talked about this, and I've said this before, to add a running back to this team. I don't believe, never will believe that DeAndre Swift is a 3-down back in the NFL. I think he's a dangerous weapon. He's absolutely a dangerous weapon. You get him in the space, good luck.
Yeah.
But I do think you
had a really good offensive line, and you could open up holes for him. You're going to be like, hey, man, I really like DeAndre Swift. We can't.
So unfortunately, DeAndre Swift's averaged 3.6 yards per carry this year, guys. Obviously, it was the lowest of his career, but I think that has a lot to say about the Chicago Bears offensive line. He averaged over 4 yards a carry in Detroit all 3 years. He averaged over 4 yards a carry in Philadelphia. Obviously, with that offensive line, that's not very tough to do. But it came to Chicago and it dropped to its lowest ever. I think that you're gonna see more DeAndre Swift in open space next year. I don't think you're going to see him running through the tackles as much. Jay, who do you like? Who do you think's a guy that the Bears could bring in here, either free agency or draft, who could really help them out and running between the tackles and kind of be complementary to a guy like to DeAndre Swift, Thunder and Lightning? And then Jay, do you think that Ian Wheeler is going to have a spot on this team when he's healthy eventually at some point?
I think so. I mean, Wheeler had a really good preseason. Of course, we all loved him on Hard Knocks, right? I mean, he was like, I could be a doctor or I could be a running back for the Bears. I love you. But, listen, again, there's so many holes. I don't think there's like one answer. I think we need a running back too, because unfortunately, Roshan Johnson just hasn't really panned out. I always find it worrisome, when you got to wear a special helmet and you're running back. That tells me that you're afraid of being hit. And again, I think these guys' safety is super important, but you're running back, man. You got to run into dudes. I'm sorry, that's just what it is. You got to lower your head, lower your shoulders, and run into dudes. So I think a running back is huge, but again, I don't think it does a hill of beans worth of good if you have this turd of an offense. You could polish a turd all you want. All you're going to get is a shiny turd, right? We need to change the offensive line so the offense looks better. I mean, you can get a really good wide receiver like Roma Dunze. You could put DJ Moore on there. DJ Moore isn't like setting the league on fire. He's really good, so we're doing okay. But imagine what he could do if he had time to run the route, or hopefully now that he's got an offensive coordinator or head coach rather that can call a play in a route tree. Maybe that'll change, but I think there's still several changes all over the offense and defense that need to happen, which is why I don't think they're going to make the playoffs next year. Chicago fans, be prepared. We're probably going to suck again next year, but as long as we see improvement and work and changes and guys playing hard and finishing tackles and not shit talking in the middle of a play, then okay, that's a good step forward.
Create a culture, install an infrastructure, and create an identity. That should be the most important things for the Chicago Bears this season with Ben Johnson as the coach. Real quick, guys.
If you see Caleb Williams start playing on schedule routinely and well, making his reads and dumping passes off and, not always having to scramble for his life. I know he's really good at it, but there's a time in the game for that, and then there's a time not
Yeah,
for it.
and
You know what
I want to dig into Caleb Williams a little bit later too, guys, because
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about how far ahead of Caleb Williams Jaden Daniels is in his development. Real quick, I want to say, Trey, welcome to the chat. We appreciate
What
you
up,
joining us,
Trey?
man. He says we need running backs who can pass block too. And Sean and I talked about this earlier today. I think pass blocking at every position, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, running back, is very important to Ben Johnson. You saw
And,
everybody in Detroit to it. It was a team effort. And then real quick, guys, Bernard Trax Hyatt, Chicago Sports Podcast.
What's going
has
on,
joined us here.
Trax? What's up,
He
brother?
said they make room for Knuckles, aka Montgomery, and then he said bear down Plank. And then real quick to Sean, who was that said that? But that was a very good point that they made. I think it was Bearski said, I don't think Ben Johnson's a big DeAndre Swift guy because he was there when they traded him away. That's a very good point. Now I don't know if Ben Johnson has an option here because I don't think anybody's going to trade for DeAndre Swift per se, but I think DeAndre Swift's probably going to finish off this 2 years left on his contract here. But that's a good point, Sean. What do you think about that?
You know what? I haven't thought about it, but it's a really good point. He did exit stage left when Ben Johnson was there, so maybe Ben didn't like his running style. Or didn't feel as though he could adapt to what his system. So that'll be interesting. I did want to touch on James Kelfer really quick. He touched on Omarion Hampton out of the University of North Carolina. He had a sophomore breakout season. He's a powerful pure runner with good size. Both seasons over 1,500 yards. He ran a 4.3 40. And he is a great running back after contact. He has been compared to Nick Chubb and James Conner. So that's just
some high praise.
Both injury dudes.
Here, I'm gonna tell you this right now.
Also true.
Outside of Genty, and we talked about this in the 4 Stars group chat earlier today, Hampton is by far my second favorite running back in this draft. He may very well be the best running back in this draft. I am not as sold as everybody on Genty. Maybe he's going to prove me wrong, but I think there's a lot of talented backs.
Sean, was Hampton the one on that list that you sent out earlier that was like the top 5 guys?
Yeah.
And what was the list? Can you go over that again?
What
was the statistic that they were?
Hold on, I just switched. Give me
because I know second. Ashton Genty was on. I mean, listen, I'm not taking away anything from
Ashton Genty. He has to be the number 1.
Yeah, he's a beast, and he's going to be a really good player in the NFL. There's no doubt in the.
I think he's going to go way before 10. To be honest with you guys,
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes anywhere from 6 to 10.
Chinese players besides Shadur, you know.
Yeah, you're always going to get your quarterbacks right. You're going to see your top 3 picks be quarterbacks, probably, most likely. And then I think you'll get some skill position players like GT and then some of the receivers like that kid out of Ohio State. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Kyle, you're talking about this list since 2018. Here are the running backs that have a career PDR and a plus YCO metrics combined, drafted in rounds 1 through 4. So we know PDR is career production rate per game, and YCO is career yards after contact. Ashton Genty is number 1 all time, or since 2018 at 12.7. Number 2 is Bijan Robinson at 12.0. Jonathan Taylor is 3 at 12.0, tied with Robinson. Trevis Etienne 11.8. Saquon Barkley 10.7. Omarion Hampton 10.4, Breece Hall 10.3, and Devon Achane 10.2. So
that's some good company right there. Some of those dangerous players in the NFL, Sean.
Yeah.
Sean talked about there. So.
Hampton is a stud, dude.
Keep their eye on and put a little watch list star next to him there. Real quick, guys, Chicago Sports Pet, Jordan Trax Hyatt says James Scadaboo had multiple concussions. We already got that with Roshan Johnson. So that's something the Bears are going to want to keep their eye on for sure, no doubt about it. But I want to talk about, since you brought it up, Jay.
Hey, really quick, Trax. I'm a huge Cam Scadaboo fan. When he did in that BCS game was just amazing. He put his team on his back against Texas. I was pulling for them. That's effort. That's heart. That was an awesome.
Turn into a juggernaut.
Yeah, that was awesome, man.
And real quick before we move on here, guys, I want to say thank you again to all the listeners. Man, we got 23 people watching live. That's amazing. That might be our personal record on Wednesday here, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Please join the show. Real quick, something that Jay said I want to address real quick. He was talking about Caleb Williams and the development and what Ben Johnson could do to help get the most out of him. I mean, all
as well,
I've heard
Jax.
about all week, and justifiably so, guys. It's obvious that Jaden Daniels is going to be a very good player in the NFL for a long time. You know what he looks like? He looks like kind of a combination of Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. He looks like the best. He looks like the guy that every team who's drafted a running quarterback has been trying to draft since Michael Vick, right? A guy who can run the ball and is just as dangerous in the pocket. And it looks like Jaden Daniels may have perfected the art. Now, I'm not going to sit here and speculate on should the Bears drafted Jaden Daniels, should they traded back for an extra draft pick. What I do want to ask you, Jay, do you think when Ben Johnson gets here, do you think that when he walks up to Caleb Williams, that they need to kind of burn it all down and restart from scratch, rebuild the foundation so they can build off of it? Or do you think he could take some of what Caleb Williams learned last year from his experience in the NFL, especially with so much adversity, being 2 head coaches, 3 offensive coordinators, one of the worst offensive lines in football, sacked 68 times, avoided 50 sacks. Do you think he can learn from some of that stuff? Or do you think they kind of just got to shake his head clear and restart?
I think it goes both ways. I think the first conversation that they have, if they haven't already had it, is you sit the kid down and you say, hey, with your offensive coordinator, with your quarterbacks coach, maybe your O-line coach, and you just say, listen, I know what you do well, right? Because I've seen all your tape. I've prepared for you. I've studied you. But I want to hear from you. What do you do well? When he says, look, I really enjoy running out of the pocket. That's where I feel most confident. Then build your offense to that. If he says, you know what, I don't like running out of the pocket. I just happen to be really good at it. I really actually like being under center. Then do that. And then slowly develop your offense around him and teach him some of those skills like, hey, you know what? Make sure you're throwing off your back foot. Remember, there's a 2 hitch, so you're going to be on, this read over here. Then you can start getting more advanced. But start with what he says I'm confident in doing. Run it through practice, and if you see, he is actually really good at this, run with it, go with it, do what you got to do. But start somewhere because confidence with a quarterback is everything. And once he starts getting confident and rolling, you can start, adding in more routes, adding in more players, maybe throw in 1 or 2 of those little trick plays, the stumble bum or whatever the hell they call it, but you got to start with what he knows he can do well and what that he can do well, even if he doesn't know it yet. And then just slowly implement. That's why, again, I think if you see it start clicking, this offense by mid-year next year, we know we're on the right track. If it doesn't really click and it's like week 12, week 13, man, I don't know. It could be a long couple of years.
Yeah, there definitely feels like there's some disconnect between Shane Waldron and Caleb Williams, and even Matt Eberflus and Caleb Williams. But, the fact that when they fired Shane Waldron and named Thomas Brown to be the interim head coach, the fact that they said that, Thomas Brown had previously been the passing game coordinator, and the Bears come out and go, well, Caleb Williams has had almost no interaction with the passing game coordinator at all, Thomas Brown. So this is going to be new for him. Like, well, first of all, that's pathetic. I mean, the guy is labeled, his job title is passing game coordinator. How has he not had any conversation with Caleb Williams to this point? Yeah. But I agree with you 100%, Jay. I think, first of all, there's a little bit of cockiness to Caleb Williams, and that's fine. Your quarterback has to be cocky, right? We all agree on that. But I think that maybe I don't want to say ignores, but maybe he doesn't even notice, subconsciously doesn't notice some of his weaknesses. And I think Ben Johnson could look at the film and say, hey, whether you like it or not, you're not setting your feet right, or you're not doing the 3-step drop right. You're doing a baby step. Some of these things that he can clean up a little bit, and then ask Caleb Williams, like you said, Jay, like, hey, Caleb, where are you comfortable? What do you like to do? Do you like to roll out of the pocket? Do you like RPOs? Do you like, what do you like doing the most?
I prefer the short, slant or whatever it is. Just hear from him. What does he like to do, and start putting more of that in your offense. It's not rocket science. This is year 1. It's not year 5. Year 5, if you're still having that conversation, Caleb Williams is not the quarterback for you.
Yeah, and so what a major concern is, that Caleb Williams came out last year and said he wanted to run more RPOs, and the Bears ran the least amount of RPOs of any team in the NFL at 17%. Now, maybe that has to do with the deficiencies of their offensive line, but you see teams like Detroit who ran it at 27%. That's going to be easy for him to come in here and instill that with Caleb Williams. Sean, where do you think that they need to clear the slate, make it a blank slate, and start over with Caleb Williams? How far behind Jaden Daniels do you think he is in his development process?
I don't think he's that far behind. I really don't. I mean, obviously we're watching this guy in the NFC Championship and he's doing things we've never seen, but we saw the talent there. Now it's about putting him in winning situations, like running some more gap concepts, helping him in the run game, avoiding obvious passing situations, using some more play action and motion to elevate his entire offensive line. I think there's a lot of things that Ben Johnson's going to bring to this team that we've, as Bears fans, have never seen before. Like, honestly, we're going to be sitting here like, holy shit, that's the Bears. Like, I have a feeling we're going to have some of those holy shit moments.
And an outside screen pass that works. Holy shit.
I really don't think, I mean, Kyle, we saw him make some incredible off schedule throws. Again, it's about putting him in winning situations, things that'll elevate his game. As we stated a little bit earlier, he was put in losing situations. We waited all year for, our biggest complaint about Waldron early on was he lacked the certain feel for play calling for Caleb Williams. I don't think we're going to have that situation with Ben Johnson. I think these guys are going to hit it off. I mean, they already talked. I mean, the first thing he did was pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Caleb," and I thought it meant a lot to have.
Sent them a picture of his face first because he FaceTimed him and wanted to make sure there was no confusion.
That is true.
You know what? But you guys, to kill Williams, not take that like a champ. I mean, he didn't say anything negative about those kids at all. He's like, it is what it is. Their kids having fun. I got no ill will towards them. That was cool for him to say. But I agree with you, both of you guys. I think, first of all, they need to simplify the offense for Caleb Williams. One thing that we know Caleb Williams is capable of is the God-given talent, right? Those off-schedule throws, running out of the pocket, whipping it downfield, throwing across his body, the arm angle, all the stuff that people talk about like Patrick Mahomes-esque. But the things that Caleb Williams seemed to struggle with the most was kind of the simple things, right, guys? Like you have to do screen passes. You got to get the ball out of his hands quickly. You can't do these 7-step drops when you have an offensive line that's not capable of stopping guys like us. How could you possibly expect that play to develop long enough for Caleb Williams to stand in the pocket and make that pass? I agree with both of you guys. At some point, the Bears need to start saying, hey, Caleb, listen, we're going to get you a couple layups early, a couple easy passes, drop it off to DeAndre Swift, maybe a screen pass to DJ Moore. And then as the game progresses and as the season progresses, we'll start to open up this offense more and more and let you kind of pick this defense apart as you feel necessary. But yeah, and then another thing I want to talk about, guys, is
hey, real quick, thanks for all the love, chat room.
Yeah, PT57, Jason, good friend of ours here. He's killing it, doing a great job tonight. It's always nice to have somebody else's opinion in here. Sean and I probably started to get on each other's nerves a little bit after a while here, after months of doing this. But another thing I saw early on in this season,
dude, 4 darts. It's not like this is
chemistry's
been around for a while.
Jason's involved in all the group texts, so these are conversations we've had before.
Hey, really quick, Kyle, really quick. I wanted to talk about this right here. Ben took it because there was the least amount to fix and the most talent already here. I don't disagree because he said that, but he also took on the challenge of playing in the NFC North, and he didn't run from it. And I really respect that, man.
He knows what he got himself into. This is not like, oh, I think this is going to be good, or I'm just taking a coaching job because I want the extra money. Like he put thought into it. Yeah. He even said in the conference, like, well, why weren't you ready last year? Well, I just wasn't ready. I wasn't in the right space. Yeah. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I do believe whether he was or not before, he is now. I think this literally was the place that he wanted to go. And I think he thought it through. He talked to everybody. He's seen us plenty of times. So it's not like he's never had a conversation with Ryan Poles or Caleb Williams, after a game or, and he knows the division. I mean, he's been in the division for a while now. So, and he literally called out all these coaches. And so he knows what he is up against. And I do love Sean. You're right. I do love that he wants that challenge. Mm-hmm. That means that he knows, hey, I know these guys are smart, but I just might actually be the smartest guy in the room here. So let's find out.
Yeah, and real quick, I would like to welcome T to the chat. I don't think I've ever seen him on here before. He says he's a big Lions fan, and they're not worried about us because we don't have an offensive line. T, I appreciate the comment, man. I love hearing from Lions fans, Packers fans, Vikings fans. We appreciate you being here. Please like and subscribe if you like it, man. Mike, thanks a lot for saying that.
Can I say something that we got a Lions fan in here? I just want to say to you, to the Lions fans, guys, please stop with this Judas. He's a turncoat. He sold us out. Because he went to Mark Brunell, he went to the coaching staff, he went to ownership. He said it during his press conference. They pushed him here. And for all the Lions fans out there that say this guy didn't come prepared and was more focused on the Bears job, I just want to let you guys know he scored 31 points. He had 521 yards. He had 40 more yards than the Washington Commanders, he also averaged 7.7 a play. The Redskins were averaging 6.6 a play. Nothing about his game said he was worried about taking the Bears' job. The fact that the defense gave up 6 touchdowns might have had something to do with it.
And Jared Goff throwing really costly interceptions.
Yeah, and if Lions fans are true Lions fans and they appreciate what Ben Johnson's done for them, they should be happy for him and it should be rooting for him to have success. And I will say personally, guys, I'm a football fan.
Go back home. Nobody likes you. You're from Detroit. Who cares?
I'm a football fan, so I was rooting for the Lions, guys. It's been that fan base has gone through so much. I really wanted the Lions to win that Super Bowl and give that.
I'm a White Sox fan. They didn't do nothing.
Yeah.
Really quick, Chris or guys. He said he went out. He's a Lions fan. He hit the like button. So thank you.
All right. He's all right. All right.
Appreciate that. You know what?
Certified badass.
Yeah, T, we appreciate you, man. You're the man. We appreciate you coming into a Bears podcast. It takes a lot of balls to come on here and start commenting to a bunch of guys you know are not going to be happy with what you're saying. But I want to talk about something real quick, guys. At the beginning of this coaching,
Ben was a bum, but there's a lot of TikToks. There's a lot of people on Twitter that are blasting this guy, sending him death threats because
and you're always going to get that.
It's the most absurd thing that's ever heard in my life.
It happens every year with every hire. We see it all the time with every draft pick, with every free agent signing, with every hire. We see this stuff. Real quick, I want to talk about how early on this coaching search, we really didn't know what was the attraction that would bring certain coaches to certain teams. But with the Patriots and Bears hiring coach being the first 2 teams to hire head coaches, isn't it becoming obvious, guys, that these coaches want a quarterback of the future in place, and those are the teams that are most desirable to go to, right? I mean,
Ben Johnson, a quarterback helps.
yeah, and Mike Vrabel, what he came out the day after he got hired and said, "Listen, I love the skill set of Drake May. That's why I came to this team." I think that Patriots having $130 million in free agency probably didn't hurt that in any way, shape, or form. But we hear it time and time again. You want to go to a team where you think they're ready to win now, and I believe that Ben Johnson thinks that the Bears are in that situation where if they just move a couple parts around, maybe add a couple guys here and there, get the right coaching staff in place. I think he believes they're ready to be competitive next year. Like Jay said, I don't predict the Bears are going to go 15-2 next year, guys, but I do think they're going to be one of the teams that people do not want to play late in the year. I do honestly believe that. I think they're going to be a physical team. I think they're going to be a disciplined team, and I think Caleb Williams is going to make a huge jump this year. So they're going to be dangerous at some point during the season.
Green Bay's definitely not going to be this at the end of the year.
Hey guys, really quick too. I heard today that it does not look as though Keenan Allen will be returning to the Chicago Bears. So yeah, I'll be looking for another wide receiver as well. And I wouldn't mind drafting one because there's a few wide receivers in this draft that are pretty sexy.
Well, you guys, how many times have we talked about on the show how big of a signing was Tim Patrick for the Detroit Lions? And I think that Ben Johnson's probably thinking something similar to that here. I don't think he's going to go
LSU. They're all super studs, dude.
Break the bank. I wouldn't even be surprised if you saw a guy like a Hunter Renfrow come here and play the slot for the Chicago Bears next year.
I would actually love that.
That happened. Fell off. It was just.
Yeah, I think that Ben Johnson believes he's capable of getting the most out of anybody and everybody, and he thinks a guy with that skill set, a guy like Hunter Renfrow, and I'm just using him as an example, but I think he believes that they don't have to go break the bank for a number 3 receiver. They expect Rome Odunze to step into that number 1,
take that step up this year,
and DJ Moore to continue doing what he's doing. So ultimately, they just need a number 3, And Keenan Allen, as good as he is, I love Keenan Allen. I was happy with him, the Bears making the trade to get him here, but he had ups and downs here. It seems like there was kind of a transition period. He always played for the same team his entire career. Then he gets moved to the Bears. It seems like he was dropping 3rd down passes, stuff that's not characteristic.
Never done before.
Yeah, you've never seen him do it before. I think ultimately, Sean, Keenan Allen's going to end up back in Los Angeles with the Chargers. I think that's what he wants.
And he'll probably do great there.
Yeah, and I think the Chargers should want it too, right? Like
family never moved.
He was the consummate professional in Los Angeles. There's no reason that they shouldn't want him back. The only reason he was traded in the first place is because of their salary cap situation. And I bet you guys that when they traded Keenan Allen to the Bears, they probably called him to the offense and were like, "Hey, we're going to trade you for a 4th-round pick. Go spend a year in Chicago, and if you don't like it there and you decide to move on, come back to Los Angeles. We'll have a conversation."
Listen, you pair him with McConkey. That's a pretty serious offensive weapon, and pretty good wide receiver room too.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Los Angeles is that one big player away from being
Yeah,
a
there's
threat.
projections of them in the draft taking the number 1 tight end in the draft this year. So
Tyler Warren would be a freaking stud, or Colston Loveland, one of the
they're
two.
projected to be interested in one of those two guys, and that would be awesome to see. I root for the Chargers as a team. I love Jim Harbaugh. Obviously, he's got a small spot in our hearts, guys. He was a Chicago Bear for a long time, so I'd like to see that.
Really quick on James, I would love for the Bears to end up with Emeka Egbuka. That would be a dream.
Yeah, Sean, let's get to some of these. Let's get to some
I
of these
don't think
comments.
we're going to be in a spot, though, unfortunately.
I don't want to ignore the comments here. James Kelfer says Egbuka, so obviously that would be a first-round pick. I don't think the Bears are going to take a wide receiver at number 10. I just don't think it's the top of the priority list. Hollywood Brown is a free agent. James Kelfer says that'd be something. Another guy like a Hunter Renfrow, a guy that's not going to break the bank, but will come here and have an immediate impact. I wouldn't be upset at all if the Bears sign him too. I don't see him, Hollywood Brown, as a slot guy. I see him more on the out. I think he plays better when he's on the outside. Yeah. I think the Bears are more concerned about getting a slot guy because Roma Dunze and DJ Moore will continue to play on the outside. But ultimately, it's up to Ben Johnson. He'll find a way to make it work no matter what. V-Dog says, question for y'all. Now we have Ben Johnson as head coach. Where does he rank among all boy genius offensive minds in the NFC? I think that remains to be seen, V-Dog. I think if you looked at him as an offensive coordinator, he was obviously near the top. Detroit was top 5 in every offensive statistical category for the last 5 years. Or the last 3 years. I don't know where he's going to rank as a head coach. I hope that continues with the Chicago Bears.
I agree.
In the top 10 offense. But there's obviously a lot of work to do here, right, guys? There's no question about that. Crooked Mitch said, missed you, Plank. Plank, we always appreciate you being on here. We miss you too. Crooked.
Hey, we missed you. We missed you, Crooked Commish. Hey, throw your podcast up here, Crooked Commish.
Yeah, Crooked Commish. Show the listeners where you could be found. I think it was Monday nights at 8 or 9 p.m. Crooked Commish says, yeah, I think Allen dropped way too many balls for my liking. I agree with you. It's just very uncharacteristic of a guy like that. And
over multiple games too, not just 1 or 2 games. Dude. It was all season long. He had like 1 drop. It seemed like every game.
Crooked Commish says, my question is, why did Bills do this last year? Crooked Commish, real quick, I want to say, one of the things that Ben Johnson said in his press conference interview today, he said he did not feel like he was ready to be a head coach last year. He wanted to stay 1 more year, and he focused on more special teams, defense, and offense this year. He said he took a step back and looked at everything from a broad spectrum, and he wanted to see how he would run a football team instead of just being offensive coordinator. I think that he personally felt like he needed to do that for 1 more year, stay as the offensive coordinator, kind of improve his skill set when it comes to being a coach overall in the because now he's in control of all 53 men in that locker room and obviously the emergency quarterback. So I think it was a good decision for him to stay there, and it worked out for the Bears, right, guys? Everything works out for a reason. It looks like things are starting to work out for the Chicago Bears. And then V-Dog says, I'm just talking in terms of play caller, Kyle. Yeah, I think that he will 100% be a top 10 offensive mind in the NFL this year for the Chicago Bears, especially with a guy like Caleb Williams, who's obviously has an amazing skill set. And then Plank says, Crooked Miss Jerko asked Ben straight up, why didn't you come to the Bears last year? And he said, or would he have come to the Bears last year? He said no. Dustin says, guys, we can't get all obsessed with the weapons on the outside again. We saw what happens when you do that this season. Fix the trenches. Don't sell out high for Higgins or spend a first-round draft pick on a running back or wide receiver. I agree with you 100%, Dustin. You have to address the offensive line. I know it's never the sexy move. I know nobody wants to see Bears draft offensive linemen, but at some point, take it from a play out of the Lions playbook. You got to do it at some point. You got to.
How about out of the Eagles playbook? How about out of
any of the teams that are succeeding right now in the NFL, or the Patriots who were dominant in the NFL for a 20-year span?
Indianapolis is a really good offense. Oh, all these teams won Super Bowls. I don't know that's possible.
Yeah. Interesting, right? Isn't it funny how that works out? All right, guys, real quick. I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it, but I have to get your guys' opinions. It's something I've been thinking about a lot. Where do you think the Bears go in terms of offensive and defensive coordinator? We heard Ben Johnson come out today and say that he needs somebody who's had previous experience, somebody he can lean on because he's so new to all of this and being a head coach. He wants somebody that, if not has not been a head coach, at least had a long tenure in the NFL. So what are some names you guys think would be interesting for the Chicago Bears?
Well, it sounds to me like that's code for Dennis Allen.
I'm getting that vibe too, Jay. I'm getting that vibe too. I don't think a guy
I've already been saying it, but it makes sense.
I don't think a guy like Steve Wilkes or a guy like
Ron Rivera,
or who's the Jets coach?
I would take Ron Rivera as my DC.
Who's the Jets coach? Robert Salah. I think all these guys, these are all still options for Ben Johnson. I think the Dennis Allen rumor was probably a little preemptive. I don't think Ben Johnson's made any decisions at all. I think Dennis Allen may be a guy he's reached out to But I don't think, people are talking like he's already made this decision. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that he's going to look at all of his options, explore all of his options, cast a wide net, and figure out the guy that he thinks fits the Chicago Bears the most and fits these players. We heard them asking Ben Johnson, would you be open to changing the scheme on the defense if it meant that bringing a certain guy here? And he said, yeah, if it means getting the guy I want to be here and changing the scheme, then yeah, so be it. So I'd like to see a guy like Dennis Allen here. If you look at Dennis Allen in 2020, 2016, when he got to the Saints, they were bottom 5 in almost every statistical category. By the time he was promoted to interim head coach, or was hired as head coach, I believe, the Saints were top 5 in every defensive statistical category. So obviously he knows what he's doing with the defense. He's a guy who's been in the NFL for a very long time. Definitely a guy that Ben Johnson could lean on. I wouldn't be upset at all if Dennis Allen is hired. What do you guys, how important do you guys think the offensive coordinator position?
I was going to say, if I may, really quick on Dennis Allen, for those who don't know about Dennis Allen, he runs a typical 4-3 defense with elements of both zone and man coverage. He does use a lot of Tampa 2, and he's known as an aggressive blitzer. He is also considered to be the top DC on the market, coveted by a few teams. And to touch on Kyle's point, in 2016, the Saints were 31st. 2017, they were 14th. 18, they were 14th. 19, they were 14th. But 20, 21, and 22, 23, they crept all into the top 10. So he used his magic touch and got this defense correct.
Hey, T, real quick, I don't blame you, man. You're a Lions fan. This is exactly the way you should think. He says, before I leave, I just want to say, go Lions. I hope you get receivers and specialty players. Don't get any line help. Stay where you are. I do hate the Packers more, though. Peace. Thanks a lot for joining us, T. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you, sir.
Man. We look forward to hearing from you in the future, man. We love having Lions, Vikings, and Packers fans on here so we can kind of get an outside perspective of where they think the Bears are in this rebuild. But
and I will tell you this: if we go, I do like Dustin's comment just a few minutes ago about Chip Kelly. I thought he did a really, really good job for Ohio State this year. And you gotta look. It's just a guy that's going to be giving Ben Johnson advice. Ben Johnson's running this offense. He said it today in the press conference.
He is the play caller.
I'm the play caller. I'm calling the plays.
So, he needs a sergeant major, like a guy that's literally just going to say, listen, guys, here's the offense. I can help coach this offense, but it's not his offense. That's really what you need.
Yeah, a guy who helped instill Ben Johnson's game plan to the players, right?
Yeah.
You need a guy who's doing the research for Ben Johnson on the upcoming opponent defense. Well, Ben Johnson's worried about everybody else in the building. You need a guy who knows how the process works, right? Real quick, guys. V-Dog says Steve Wilkes is no longer an option. Kyle, he is going to the Jets with Aaron Glenn. I guess that was announced today by Deanna Rossini. Thanks a lot, V-Dog. I appreciate the update.
Yeah,
I did not know that. I think that's a really good hire for Aaron Glenn. I mean, obviously, Aaron Glenn's probably going to be the defensive play caller for New York. So I think that's kind of like our offensive coordinator.
We have a Mark Brunell from Crooked Commish. You know what? I love Mark Brunell as a Jaguar, the lefty, the southpaw. I wouldn't be opposed. I wouldn't be. You know what? I don't actually, and I don't mean to sound stupid about it, but I don't really care who the OC is because I know who my OC is, and he's going to be patrolling the sideline. But I guess if it comes down to passing game coordinator and someone who's working hand and fist with Caleb Williams, I guess that decision does become kind of important because I guess for me, I would like to find a person that could be another coach for Caleb.
Yeah,
whoever that may be.
Sean, I mean, not to say
you should hire a quarterback's coach is really what it is. Yeah.
I mean, not to say you guys that you should project that your coach is going to be fired at some point, or like God forbid something happened to Ben Johnson and he had to go if he had to have surgery or something and somebody else to take over. But Sean, I bet you the Bears fans, when Matt Eberflus was a coach, were like, I don't really care about my defensive coordinator. But Eric Washington did not do a very good job stepping in. I at least like the offensive coordinator to have like a brain in his head.
But the caveat to that, Kyle, is if this offensive fails, no one's looking at the offensive coordinator. They're looking at Ben Johnson.
Yeah, 100%. So. But, and then real quick, guys, James Kelfer says you just need history and leading. That's Pete Carroll. I don't think Pete Carroll is going to take an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator.
No, he wants to be a coach.
He wants to be a head coach, and I'd say the same for I appreciate the love for Lovey here, guys, by James, but I don't think Lovey Smith will accept a defensive coordinator position either. I think he'd be happier being a head coach in college than he would be playing defense.
Cool money for that pick though.
I was just going to say, Mike Ross just jumped in, and you shot this out in our group chat the other day. What do you think about Thomas Brown being named back OC in the Chicago Bears?
Here's the reason that I brought that up the other day, guys. I don't love Thomas Brown by any means necessary. The reason that I love Thomas Brown being the OC for the Bears or even quarterbacks coach is because he already has an established relationship with Caleb Williams, and it might make the transition from Matt Eberflus to Ben Johnson easier for him. And then another thing is Ben Johnson could lean on a guy like Thomas Brown, like, hey man, I know you were in charge of this offense for the last 6, 7, 8 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
What did you notice about Caleb Williams? What did you like about him? What did you not like about him? What do you think he needs to improve on? I mean, like you guys said, does the offensive coordinator really matter? If not, then go get a guy who has the inside information, right? And a guy who's been part of this organization for the last year could tell you kind of the way the vibes felt, how the culture went, the lack of identity, lack of infrastructure, and get his 2 cents on a way that he thinks he could fix that. What do you think about that, Jason?
I listen. He's not going to be calling plays, but he's also a type of guy, Thomas Brown, that when he came in, he was honest, he was straightforward. I'm not going to say that he turned the whole culture around, but he definitely cut a lot of the crap out. And maybe he's a guy that deserves to be under a guy like Ben Johnson to learn, maybe to get better, so that maybe he can become a head coach a year or two down the road. I don't see any problem with it at all. I mean, the players seem to like him. You know what I mean? I didn't hear anything bad from Caleb. Now that could also be because he was a guy that said, we're not going to be talking, as much trash in the media as we have been, and that even includes like, DJ Moore. A lot of these guys are just talking crap, and he cut that out. He said, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to keep everything in house. You got a problem, you come to me and we'll figure it out.
If anything, Thomas Brown was at least a guy, and Sean, I think you got a video for us to back this up. The guy had a lot of passion, man. He's one of the only Bears coaches I've seen in a long time who you could see him on the sideline. He was animated. He was screaming. He was yelling. Yeah, this stuff right here. This is the stuff the Bears have lacked for a very long time in my mind. Yeah. I mean, you never saw anything. Matt Eberflus looked like he was like reading a book on the sideline the whole time.
Was he hanging out with AJ Brown?
He didn't show any sense of accountability. He kind of let the players do whatever they wanted. They talked about how he didn't address mistakes in practice. I don't think Thomas Brown's that type of guy. I think Thomas Brown is passionate about the game of football, and he's passionate about winning. And I think
he's a good coach. He's a coach. I don't know if he's head coach material just yet, but he's a good coach. I don't need a play caller. I need a guy to say, hey, look, this is why you're making this block here. Here's why we need you to make this block here. I know you don't want to make it, but here's why you're going to do it. And if you don't do it, we'll find somebody else that will. He's that type of coach, and that's to me what a coach is. Developing a player isn't just giving them a set of rules and saying go ahead and do it. You got to explain why and get guys to buy into your scheme and your philosophies and why is it important. Yeah, right. I'm a wide receiver. I'm making $20 million a year. I don't want to block and get hurt. Yeah, but dude, you block because now he's open and we're going to win the game because we're scoring more points. And by the way, when you're over here running your route, your buddy that you just blocked for is going to be blocking for you too. And he's going to block just as hard for you that you did for him. That's why you block. That's what a coach does. They develop not just the talent, but they develop mindsets. They develop, these young kids, they're 21, 22 years old. Caleb Williams is 22. He's still a baby. They develop these young men into grown-ass men because it's not a fun sport. It could be over tomorrow. So you better be ready for pain and you better be ready to be uncomfortable, apparently.
Jason, that's something we saw a lot of in Detroit. I mean, how many times do you see St. Brown making a block for Jalen Williams or Jameson Williams making a block for St. Brown? Or even the fact that
top wide receivers in the league.
Yeah. Well, and how about the fact that these guys would be willing to catch a pass and get hit just to lateral it off to somebody else and give them the glorious touchdown, right? Like they don't care. They wanted to win football games. That's all they gave a shit about.
Hey, you know what? You don't hear Montgomery and Gibbs bitching about who stole whose touchdown or, hey, I know I drove the ball all the way down there and then you handed it to Montgomery or you handed it to Gibbs for the touchdown or threw it into the corner of the end zone. There's none of that. They all want to play because it helps to win too, right? If you're not winning, it's not going to work. But it's a culture. It is a culture thing that when you say, listen, this is why you're doing it because you're going to get help from somebody else. And honestly, it's a lot easier to play a team sport when you're getting help from everybody.
Sean, what do you think about Mike Ross's comment here? He says, what about Matt Patricia? Obviously, guys, we all know that he's a rocket scientist. It's also a football coach, but he was a rocket scientist for DC. Good.
launch a rocket. You can't play call it offense.
Yeah, I agree with you. It doesn't always being really smart doesn't always transition to the NFL. I like what Matt Patricia did when he was in New England. I have nothing against the guy. I think he was, by all accounts, he was a really nice guy. I don't think he's right for the Chicago Bears. I just don't think that's a good marriage for Ben Johnson and Matt Patricia. I know that Matt Patricia is the one who brought Ben Johnson to Detroit, but you obviously saw Ben Johnson leapfrog him at any position on the field. So probably not a guy you want to bring in.
You know what is a good marriage, Kyle? Oh, sorry, I had to do it. I have a question for you guys.
All right,
off subject. We went through all these off seasons. We now have Ben Johnson. We have Caleb Williams. Our cycle of horror is this cycle, and people in the chat.
You said horror, right? Not cycle of horror.
Cycle of horror.
Oh, okay.
People in the chat, please answer yes or no. Is this finally done? Is this finally over? Are we going to be headed in this direction where we're not crying, we're not winning the offseason, talking too much shit, and then losing to the Packers twice? Have we beat this cycle?
I want it to be over. I want it to be over. I want it to be over, but it's over when it's over, right? And right now we don't know what we got until maybe year 2 or year 3. Even if the Bears do somehow have this miraculous run, the offense looks awesome. We don't even change people on the offensive line, but Ben Johnson's so good that we have the number 1 offensive line now. We win 16 games, and we're now this year's Washington, and we're in the championship game. That still doesn't mean the year after is going to be good. For me, this cycle is over when we're a perennial playoff team. When that happens, that's when I'm okay with it.
Yeah, Sean, I agree with Jay here, and I agree with everybody else in the chat here. Crooked Commission says too soon to call. He says cautiously optimistic, and then Dean Kurth says 2026 is when he expects them to make that transition. I think that it's only fair with what's happened in Chicago. You got to give Ben Johnson the allotted amount of time to fix this and improve this. But I do definitely believe that you're going to start to feel the culture and the infrastructure and everything start to change a little bit. I think we already have, right? I mean, you guys, when's the last time that the number 1 head coaching free agent or anybody else, any other free agent in the world wanted to come to the Chicago Bears?
Can I
They all say it, but you never really believed it. This is actually, I believe he really wanted to come here.
Can I say this? Can we just not Craig counsel him? Can we give him time? Because after May, everyone wanted Craig Counsell fired. Wasted time. This guy sucks. This guy's the shit. And I kept saying to everybody, just calm down. He's got to put his fingerprints on the team.
Sean,
relax.
Real quick. I'll let you finish that in a second. There's some breaking news here. Bears requested to interview Rams assistant head coach / passing game coordinator Aubrey Pleasant. I'm assuming this is for the offensive coordinator position. So that is breaking news. This is the first I've heard of Aubrey Pleasant. I've heard his name before, but I've not heard his name in terms of the Chicago Bears. Sean, sorry, you can finish your
McVay system. I'll take.
Yeah, I forgot where I was. Where was I?
You're saying Craig Counsell, Bears fans were just too quick to judge.
Can we just give him some time? Because, Kyle, we had these arguments all last year. We heard people ready to fire Craig Counsell 3 months into his job. He finished a lot stronger than he started. We had a hot May. We had a hot April. May, June, July didn't look so good. He got better in August and September when he started figuring out the players and the team that he wanted and started implementing his process into the team. And all I'm saying with Ben Johnson is if it doesn't work out in weeks 1 through 8, I don't want to hear everyone say, oh, this is so stupid. We're paying this guy. Bears suck. He sucks. Save it. Give the guy some time to mature and build this team out, man. You don't build a house in a day. So give them some time. Just don't Craig Counsell in Chicago, please.
Yeah, Sean, this is the same thing I talked about. Same thing I talked about with Lions fans when Ben Johnson left. Bears fans, most sports fans don't entrench their whole lives in sports like we do, guys, where it's what we think about often. So most of these people kind of think with their heart and not their brain. And if the Bears went 0-2, you're going to hear the boo birds at Soldier Field where are like, oh, Jay talked about this earlier. First, obviously, you're in one of the cities that you're in the limelight constantly. You're never out of it. Bears fans are going to let them hear it if they start losing games early. But I'm with you, Sean. Trust the process. You brought the guy here. He was your number one choice from day one. You brought him here to change the culture, instill an infrastructure, and we'll start winning football games. Then give him some time to adjust to this roster. Like he said, this is not Detroit. I'm not coming here and bringing Detroit's offense here. I'm going to create an offense. And you guys, is it just me, or with what's happened in the NFL in the last 10 years, the transition the NFL has made, you basically can't practice, right? You can't hit each other. You can't do anything. Your training camps are what, Sean, 2 hours a day?
Yeah, I mean, they're not even.
They're not giving people a lot of opportunity to correct all of this stuff and run
Bradfield,
off
boys.
season, man. Yeah, they barely even get to touch each other. This is something that's not the same as it used to be, where practice was like a regular game. This is going to be a transition period. And it's going to take a long time.
The good old days.
I won't be sold on Ben Johnson until probably midway through his second year in Chicago. So that's midway through 2026. Then the 2026 season, I should say. That's when I'll start to critique Ben Johnson and see what. And what you do want to see though, early and often, is just Caleb Williams making these just baby steps, man. You just want to see these baby steps, and even if the line is only
for that this year.
Yeah, 100% from day one, from training camp to preseason to the regular season. You want to see these small baby steps where he starts to become, where he looks like he's more comfortable playing in the NFL. And he didn't look comfortable to me playing in the NFL, and that's not surprising to me, considering he got hit.
And I was going to say, I don't think that was on him. I think that was Waldron again. Who
yeah, let's talk about the most impressive stat for Caleb Williams. He started all 17 games and was sacked 68 times.
Didn't miss a freaking game.
The only Bears quarterback to start every game of the season since 2009 in Jay Cutler. So that in itself is a very impressive stat.
And just think, if he didn't avoid those 50 sacks, he would have been sacked, 118 times last year.
Here's something to ponder, guys. You know, we're all talking about how great Jaden Daniels is, and of course he's having a stellar year, but what kind of adversity has he really had to go through this year? Really,
He's had a lot. He's had a lot. Yeah, he's come back in many games, dude. He came back against the Eagles. They were down.
Well, Sean, I think he's talking about like adversity off the field.
Oh, you're winning games. There's no adversity. Like, people still love you if you're winning games. Caleb has actually played a fairly similar statistical season, other than the wins and maybe some rushing yards. And he's really got no love in the national media. On a really crappy team. You know, the guy, honestly, I think he came back and won the Green Bay game. He won that game. He really almost came back and beat him the first time too, but he doesn't get any credit. So he only gets adversity. I'm interested to see in their second years, is there going to be any adversity?
Thanks, Matt Mass. Take it easy, brother.
How does he handle it? And then, you know, how is Caleb Williams going to handle if it goes really well? Is he going to get a little maybe too cocky? A little too, Hollywood. That's what I'm interested to see, because I don't really see a sophomore slump coming for Caleb Williams. I would not be surprised if I see one for Jaden Daniels.
No, Jason, you make a really good point. Like, you've seen on Facebook and Instagram and everything, you've seen these Caleb naysayers, these Caleb haters who are like, oh, the Bears are 5-12 again, obviously putting all the blame on the shoulders of Caleb Williams. But
he's 22, get addicted to social media. So
you won't find a Washington Commanders fan in the world that doesn't like Jaden Daniels or has been putting some hate mail out about him, like sending him personal messages like, dude, you suck. Like, they are all enamored with Jaden Daniels right now. I agree with you though, Jay. I think that the odds that Caleb Williams improves in his sophomore season and Jaden Daniels maybe even take a little step back, like a CJ Stroud that we saw this year, I think the odds of that are pretty highly likely. If they have any adversity at all.
Year, just not a great year.
Yeah, say the Commanders lose their left tackle the game one next season, I think you're going to see things fall apart a little bit. I'm not going to project that the Washington Commanders end up in the NFC Championship game again. That's for sure. But, Ant Mass, real quick, guys, he's out of here. He's leaving. So we appreciate you joining the show, Ant Mass. Thank you so much, man. Please share this with your friends if you enjoy the show. He says, once again, everybody says thanks to PF57 for being on here today. Hey, or PT. Jay, do you want to tell him what PT57 stands for?
Hell yeah, I do. Polish Thunder 57. That's the 57. Yeah. This is the Polish Thunder.
Yeah, you guys. Jay is a good friend of ours. He's been a listener here since we started the show. We really wanted to get him on the show. Today seems like the perfect opportunity, especially with all the recent news in Chicago. So really happy that he joined us. He's doing a great job.
Hey, welcome to be. I'm happy to be here, dude.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Hey,
Sean?
Before we wrap this up, which we got to do here pretty soon, NFL Final Four. How we looking? So let's just say this. Kyle, you know this, and I know this. I'm going to continue on my hot streak. I'm going to try. I missed 2 games so far, 1 straight up, 1 against the spread in this entire playoffs. That was Tampa, Washington in the first round, and the Chargers, Texans in the first round. Haven't missed a game since. I actually had a phenomenal weekend. I cleared almost $1,000 this weekend.
You missed the money line on Detroit. You didn't miss the spread.
I didn't bet the money line on Detroit.
Oh, I thought you projected the Lions to win on this podcast.
Oh, you know what? You're right. I had Detroit minus 4.5. I took the line down.
Yeah.
You're right. So those are the 3 games.
Hey, listen, don't feel bad about that one because the entire world had Detroit minus 4.5.
I completely forgot. You know what pisses me off about that? I took that shit down 5 points and I still freaking lost because they couldn't stop a nosebleed. Those bastards.
What should piss you off is you were the one telling me that Washington may very well win that game. So I don't know why you took the money. I don't know why you took any spread at all, dude. You gotta trust yourself. Sean.
That's why money lines exist, dude.
Here, Jay. I literally came on the show and said, "Hey, man, I like Detroit. I think they're going to win, but don't be surprised." I said I think the spread is way too big, and don't be surprised if Washington pulls the upset. And then I take Detroit minus the fucking points.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Well, yeah, but you know what, man? Here's what you thought. You thought that it was going to be a close enough game, and that's why you thought Washington had a chance to win.
Yep.
Thought Detroit was just going to pull it off somehow because they're, really
they
good
have
for
been.
They've done
I mean, you made a mistake. I'm sure a lot of people made. I think closer game. I'll take the points, but if you got to make that decision, you're gambling, you're not sure. Just take the money line, man. That's why it's there. Just take the 50-50.
I will tell you this: when we did our predictions at the beginning of the playoffs, Kyle, I took the Eagles and the Bills in the Super Bowl. So I'm still alive. But I threw $150 on the Washington Redskins plus 280.
Yeah.
So,
I'm out of it. Obviously, Sean, I took the Bills and the Lions to be in the Super Bowl. Obviously, the Bills are still alive. The Lions are not. But the
Bills are going to beat Kansas City, dude. You got them, but
I hope so.
I mean,
I hope so.
Do you guys not feel like it's this is Josh Allen's year? Like this has got to be.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this guy has done so much with so little to get to these points time and time again. Josh Allen is so deserving of Super Bowl. This kind of feels like Peyton Manning in 2006. Like, listen, guys, I'm a Bears fan through and through. You guys know that. But I said to all my buddies before that game in 2006, there's no chance in hell the Bears are standing between Peyton Manning and the Super Bowl championship. That guy had been to the playoffs like 8 years in a row. I'm like, he's going to dismantle the Chicago Bears. And you know what? It was a closer game than I thought it was going to be. But I knew
they run back the kickoff, and everybody was probably pointing at you, laughing at you, saying, "Nah,
they were.
Of course, we put in Rex Grossman. Yeah, we're gonna win."
And I'm like, guys, Peyton Manning hasn't even taken the field yet, so you can love the kickoff all you want, but he's gonna destroy the Bears.
Forever immortalized, right there.
Sean, if you
to this day have never watched the end of that Super Bowl. Won't do it.
Sean, if you want my projections, I'm gonna say that I think the Eagles are gonna find a way to win this game. I think the Eagles are really good at controlling the pace of the game. Washington always wants it to be really fast paced. They always want to score points immediately. Philly just doesn't let you do that. They take away the top. They make you throw short passes. They make you make mistakes on 10, 11, 12 play drives.
You got a running back that busts out 70-yard runs.
Yeah, the Eagles control the pace of the game via the run, whether it be Jalen Hurts or Saquon Barkley. It doesn't matter. I think ultimately it'll be a close game. I think it'll be like a field goal. I think the Eagles will win this game, and it'll be Eagles, Bills in the Super Bowl. I think you were right from the beginning.
Carter is really, really, really good. I wish the Bears would have taken him when we had a chance, but
conversation for another day.
He had all those problems and issues, yada yada yada. But they picked a Georgia guy and put him on a team with a bunch of Georgia guys, so I guess it worked out. But look, their defense is way better than people give him credit for. Man, Vic Fangio is having a year this year. I think he found his sweet spot, and he's like, okay, I'll just DC and I'll run this league. Don't worry about it. So don't be surprised if Jaden Daniels don't look so good. Darius Slay is a stud too. I mean, dude.
Well, I mean, all the Eagles drafts, Jason, have just been for the last 5 years have been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, they got the Nakobe Dean and the last pick in the first round. They went and got the top 2 defensive backs in this draft, and Cooper DeJean and Mitchell. I mean, this team is just
Grignon Mitchell is so
the
good.
whole
Dude.
organization from top to bottom is they deserve to win a Super Bowl at some point. And I think this is probably going to be the year they're going to get there. I hope Josh Allen has something to say about it, though.
So
I really want to see Josh Allen.
Dude, those are overdue.
I'll give you this. I took the bet because I did not like the way Jalen Hurts was in that interview and the way he got twisted like a pretzel at the end of that game. If he's not healthy, the Eagles are going to lose this game. And you know I feel about Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's Joe Montana, but
the stats say when he throws less than like 135 yards, they win. So they actually really don't need him to be all that phenomenal.
No, that's true. If they can't stop Barkley, Redskins are going to lose this football game.
Well, and you know what really saved the Bills season? You know what has them where they're at right now in the AFC Championship game? The fact that for the last 6 or 7, whatever games of the season it was, they did not allow a 100-yard rusher. When the Bills shored up that rushing defense is when the Bills became a formidable opponent in the NFL. And then, if you go into a game and say, hey, the Bills are going to stop anybody on this team for rushing for 100 yards, and you guys got to deal with Josh Allen on the other side of the field, that's not a good recipe for any other team. Nobody wants to play the Bills, right? The Chiefs don't want to play the Bills. I think the Chiefs were hoping that the Ravens would have won that game. They don't want to play the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen is just having an absolute remarkable year, doing things we've never seen done in the NFL before.
I agree.
And he continues to do it. And people are like, well, the last game he threw 12 passes. I don't give a shit. He does what it takes to win the game. That's what he does.
They got rid of half their offense in the offseason.
You know what Joe Brady did? He said, I'm going to run the ball and keep Lamar Jackson off the field as much as I can. It's about as genius as you can be because when Lamar Jackson's on the field, Derrick Henry's on the fucking field. And you don't want those guys on the field. Joe Brady's a genius. Hey, really quick. I'm going to throw up a memory because it's a happy Bears day and it's going to put a smile on our face. And I just
want to. It's BJ week, man.
Strange because he's going to come from the right side. The tight end pushes him. Now, that shows me that there should have been a running back there. There should have been something. Or was the tight end wrong in that protection? But you cannot let Kevin Byard go unblocked right to your quarterback or bad things happen.
I wish it was Jordan Love.
I wish it was Jordan Love, too. I actually got into a fight with I got into a fight with a Packers fan on Facebook today. He was calling me an idiot because I'm celebrating because we beat the Packers once, and the Packers didn't try and win that game. And I'm like, dude, your coach came out and said you were doing everything you could to try and win that game. They
wanted a better seat. Why wouldn't it? Yeah.
Well, Sean, let me give you some advice, man. Don't ever argue with a fool because onlookers don't know the difference.
That is true.
Like guys, I'd say it's been a good show. It's probably time to get out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay, you were awesome. You rocked the chat.
Jay.
Loved you. We loved you.
Oh, thanks, guys. You guys are good too, man.
Jay, thanks so much for being here, man. Mike, Dean, Breaking News, Bruce, Crooked Commish, Ant Mass, James Kelfer, V-Dog, Plank, Brennan Trax, Hyatt, Elizabeth, everybody in the chat, man. We heard Ferguson, Dustin, Brandon, everybody who joined us today. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting anybody. T, we had a new listener here today. Appreciate you guys. Oh, Bearski, appreciate you guys so much for coming in here today, man. Thank you so much for supporting us and leaving comments in here. Please like and subscribe. We appreciate River Street Tavern for being our 4-star Chicago Sports first sponsor ever. If you guys are ever in the area, East Dundee, 102 North River Street, it's a sports bar through and through, plenty of TVs. We always have a Chicago game on, always have sports games on.
Amazing bartender.
Now the bartender there sucks, but the food's good. Go check it out if you guys get a chance, man. We really appreciate you guys. Sorry, not Bearski, Broski Bear was his name.
Hey, as we always say, you guys in the chat are the stars of the show. We appreciate y'all so much. We thank you. We love you. Without you, it's 3 idiots talking sports. So thanks for joining us on a frigid Wednesday in Chicago. But we got one more thing to do before we get out of here.
Anything you want to get out there before you wrap up?
Shit, fuck Green Bay.
All right.
Fuck yeah.
Let's go.
Fuck yeah.
Let's go. Hey, I believe these guys are going to be doing bare minimum tomorrow at 11:30. So check them out at 11:30. Don't forget our sister station CSP. They're pumping out stuff all the time. You can catch us there. So on some Mondays, Dennis and Dustin and Brandon are usually there on Mondays. Kyle and I guest every once in a while. But until next Monday on the Hellas Hall Hangover, y'all stay safe out there. We love you. Peace and bear down.